Hey, I'm Corey Bond. Thanks for checking out my podcast. I just wanted to preface this first episode with a couple things. Um, we decided last minute to do the first episode on this day. We didn't have time to discuss what we were going to talk about very much, so I didn't have time to prepare a lot. So some of these things I went in without as much information as I would typically like to go into this with, because if I'm going to do a show like this and if we're going to be talking about these things, I want to be well informed. So in the future, I'm going to plan out these episodes better so that I'll be more informed going in. One of the first things we talked about in this episode was the storm on the Capitol Hill, which came on the day of the congressional vote for the Senate. And I just wanted to clear up what the results of that vote were, because in this podcast I said I wasn't quite positive what the results were. So what ended up happening was the Senate results were 48 to 50 in favor of Republicans, but the two independent seats they're expected to vote with Democrats, so essentially most of these votes are going to end up being 50-50, and Kamala Harris is going to split the vote. So the Democrats will end up winning most of the Senate votes, more than likely. So there's that, and then I also said that one of my friends had sent me an article about a similar instance at Capitol Hill in the 80s, and that was false. I misspoke. It was actually in 2018 where anti-Kavanaugh protesters took over the Senate office building, and it seems like this wasn't violent. I don't think that this was a violent thing, so I don't think these things are completely comparable. I think it's worth looking at, and I'm gonna link sources to all this stuff in the description so you can read about this stuff for yourself. But I don't think it's necessarily a fair comparison. So again, that's my bad. I didn't have time to prepare for this. I take responsibility for that. A couple other things. I bought this camera day of as well, so the video was recorded in 720p and there's a watermark on it. That won't be the case. Future videos will be in 1080p for those of you watching on YouTube, and they won't have a watermark on them. So I'm sure more technical issues will arise and they'll be sorted out over time. Like I said, this was very last minute that we put this all together, so I didn't have time to do any kind of test run or anything. So this first one kind of was the test run. And I just wanted to say that this is a lot of this stuff we talk about in this episode isn't that a lot of these things aren't things that myself or Caleb are experts in, and that's why I wanted to clarify that please check sources on this stuff. Please check facts. Don't take my word or his word for these things, because I'm here to encourage conversation. I'm here to talk about these things. In the future, I will inform myself better before these episodes, so if I know what we're going to be talking about, I'll do research and I'll come in with facts to lay down. This one was very last minute. It was very off the cuff, so I just want to say I'm here to encourage conversation. I want to talk about these things. I may be very wrong about a lot of these things, and if that's the case, hopefully my ignorance will come out through this conversation, because I want people to be able to talk. I want people of all different backgrounds to be able to come on my show and we can talk and find inconsistencies with each other, because I think this is what we need as a country. If we're going to stay sane, we've got to talk to each other. We can't keep assuming what each other believe. So I want to spread love and cooperation between people. No matter what you believe, no matter how much you disagree with me, I want to talk to you. I want to spread love with you. I'm not going to hate you for what you believe no matter what. I don't want to spread division. And I know we talked about secession and dividing the country, and that may seem like an inconsistency, but we can decide as a country that separating is for the best without being divided as human beings and without having hatred towards one another, kind of like a marriage that ends on good terms. You know, if we're going to divide this country, we can attempt to do so on good terms. And if anything like that is going to take place with good terms, it's going to be as a result of difficult conversations like these, where maybe I sit down with someone I disagree with, and through conversation I realize that I'm blatantly wrong about this kind of stuff, and this is a method to do that. And this is what I love about this whole podcasting atmosphere, is that long form conversations don't give you the option to cop out and give a short response to something. No, if you don't understand what you're talking about, if I don't understand what I'm talking about, it will come out in conversation. So in the description of this YouTube video, in the description of the podcast, I'm going to have links to a lot of the things we talked about, so you can go check this stuff out for yourself. Things like Jonestown, which we talked about a bit. I'm going to link every documentary we mentioned. I'm going to link that. Anything else we talked about that I think is that I've found sources that I think are worth reading into, I'm going to provide here. Again, this first episode of the show, it's only going to get better from here, because what I've learned just from this first episode is that if I'm going to sit and have long-form conversation about this stuff, I've got to do more research, personally myself, because some of the stuff we talked about today, like we went on a whole tangent about anarcho-communism, and that's something that I've never even thought about in my life. I'm not familiar with that at all. So that's going to happen. You know, things are going to come up that I'm not familiar with, but all I can do is encourage you as a listener to look into this stuff for yourself, and to also go into this with an open mind and realize that I'm here doing this trying to learn. I'm not doing this because I have all the answers and I'm trying to give them to you. I'm doing this because I'm trying to find the answers. Okay? So I'll let you go ahead and get into this first episode. I appreciate you watching. Stick around for future episodes. I have a lot of stuff I'm excited to talk about, a lot of things I'm excited to research and try to dig up the facts on. So I really appreciate it. If there's anything that we talked about in this episode that was incorrect, if there's anything we said that is just blatantly incorrect, please reach out to me. YouTube comments, Instagram, whatever method you want to use to reach me. If you don't know how to reach me, YouTube comments are probably the easiest way for me to respond to you. So if there's anything we're blatantly wrong about, please tell me. The last thing I want to do is be up here and put myself in a position to have a platform to speak to people and to be saying incorrect things. Okay? So I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. And we're live.
All right.
It's the first episode of the Corey Bondcast. So this episode, we want to start by talking about America. This podcast, I'm not going to have like a specific theme or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. So we want to talk about America.
Right.
And today in America, we just finished witnessing that raid on the Capitol.
A raid on the Capitol.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well.
What do you think about that?
I mean, there's really honestly a lot to unpack, and there's despite everyone immediately kind of going straight to, hey, let's use the word riots now.
Yeah.
That's a new one apparently.
Yeah.
But I think what it is you're seeing a lot of reactionaries starting to go like, this is an attack on our democracy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is literally like the worst thing that could ever happen.
I've seen people call them domestic terrorists.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
A lot of that.
That was interesting.
And so, oh god, they're even going to white supremacy right now, I think.
Yeah, I don't know why this has to do with race. This specific one.
I'm a little torn right now because I've watched a few people, people who are supporting them, people who are decrying them, and so what you kind of get is it's like, it's either monumentally stupid for them to have done that, or actually I like to call it a misstep in the right direction.
Misstep in the right direction.
A misstep in the right direction.
Before we go any further, I'm just going to explain a little bit in case people are watching.
Yeah.
Like in the future. So basically, what happened was the election results of the 2020 election are very highly contested. Of course, if you're keeping up with politics right now, you know that it's highly contested. And they were working on the congressional seats.
Yeah.
They finalized that. They gave it to the Democrats, correct?
I need to read up a little on
that. I believe what ended up happening was that the Democrats got slightly ahead in seats of Congress, but what ended up happening was a bunch of people came out with Trump flags, and they went to the Capitol building. They went to the Capitol. They broke into the Senate. They broke down windows. Like, they absolutely just forced their way in. There was police there. They got into fights with the police. It was crazy. Some dude got up on the podium, the speaker podium. I thought that was funny that he had the nerve to do that. But they went in, and then of course the reaction from a lot of people was very negative, saying that this is an attack on democracy. A lot of people have put it on Trump, saying that it's Trump's responsibility, which we can get more into that and his role in this, because I thought putting this on Trump was very interesting.
I've got some things to even say about that.
So that's kind of what went down. They broke in, and then they left pretty peacefully. The police came out and kind of nudged them out, and everyone left, and that was that. It was kind of weird. I can't say I saw it coming.
So this is kind of how I see it. It was a little bit because, what was I saying? It was a little bit interesting to watch because these are at this point they didn't have a directive. I saw a Telegraph post that was like, "This was planned for years." I'm like, really? Because it doesn't look like it.
By who?
No, but I don't know.
That's what I want to know. It's like, who?
The
who
Boogeyman.
planned it? Yeah, the Boogeyman.
Apparently,
The
it was Trump's coup. That's what they're saying. You have the MAGA cultists. You're hearing a lot about that, and QAnon, which, regardless of what you think about them,
Right.
I really don't have much of an opinion on them. I haven't really researched QAnon a lot. I don't tend to mess with those.
Yeah, from what I've heard about Q, I just don't have any reason to believe that the stuff Q says is true. Because there's a lot of stuff that Q has said that just ended up not happening.
It's almost it's like you take a reasonable assertion or a viewpoint, and what ends up happening is those viewpoints end up getting discredited by the most extreme of iterations, I guess, of that. And so you have QAnon basically coming over here saying the wildest shit, from what I understand. And what that only
they say that Trump is fighting some sort of battle against the pedophile elite. That's one thing that the Q says a lot of stuff, but that's one of them.
Yeah,
that's one of the things.
Which honestly, I don't honestly know. But what I do know, it's like honestly, I'm not gonna pretend I know anything. But I do know that when you start talking about all these crazy things, like you take a situation. Let's look at the election fraud results, for instance. So went in there. There's a lot of abnormalities, really odd abnormalities. A lot of coincidences. Some things don't add up.
Right.
And so you look at that, and Trump was going in with Rudy Giuliani, and he was talking about, I think it was the 14th or 15th Amendment, basically. Okay. That's what he went to court for. And then Sidney Powell comes out with the Dominion and the Kraken, and all of a sudden, that's what everyone's focused on. It's basically, look at these unhinged, like crazy, like saying this happened for years. And it's like, that's not what it was, but that's what it became. And so a lot of people are actually blaming her and her lawsuits for discrediting the fight basically against the.
So that if there was election fraud, it's her fault that it wasn't brought out.
I wouldn't say entirely. Obviously, there's a lot of.
But that's what people are saying.
Yeah, pretty much. It makes it easier for them to attack it when you basically are almost forced to associate with the most extreme of your.
Right. It's like when people take the most racist hick person and associate all Republicans with that person.
Pretty much, or when leftists are all commies, and there's some liberals going, what?
Yeah, exactly. Because I've been in that place. There's times when I had very liberal ideologies, and people say like, "Oh, I'm a communist." Like, no, not at all.
Believe me, you get a lot of white supremacist and racist, and there's a term that's called the istophobes. Apparently, that's what everyone describes them all, and it's like, no, this isn't what I believe. And there's an interesting thing about that, and I think I have a kind of almost a little bit of a step in the right direction to start avoiding that kind of thing, because really we tribalism on display, and the way we do that is we stop kind of accepting these prepackaged ideals.
Yes.
And so when you get basically it's almost a result of the two-party system, where it's basically you're liberal leaning, you're Democrat or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I think a welfare state's okay. I think there's a safety net. I like my infrastructure.
Right.
And so you go and vote the Democrat, and all of a sudden he's talking about bringing, a social democracy and, the Green New Deal and critical race theory and gender studies and all these things. And you're like, wait. I just wanted this.
Right.
And there's no outlet for people that really just want that. Those
and I think that could be something where maybe the United States needs to look at issue-based voting. Instead of, I'm going to vote for someone who I believe is going to represent me best. Maybe we vote for a president, but certain issues like things like abortion, drug legalizations, things like this that are specific issues that are easy to pinpoint. Let the people vote. Let the people vote.
Yeah,
I think that could work.
What I think it goes a little bit further than just rejecting parties. What you need to look at, and honestly, it's kind of a fundamental aspect of our human nature is to categorize things, is to basically place things in boxes based on a certain checklist that they tick.
It is.
And so what we need to stop doing is, and this is what I've called, is we gotta like stop kind of going, saying things like I'm a conservative or I'm a liberal. It's crazy. I know that sounds, but I
agree, bro, 100%.
People really need to take a moment, especially like right now, instead of going all in on all these, because I've seen a lot of people, man, that online that are like, every single one of these people should have been shot dead, should have been mowed down, and people are like, "Oh, I'm so glad that woman got shot."
Yeah, that's
which
awesome.
I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, look at what the left say," because it's not. It's people on Reddit, really. What it is.
Listen, Reddit. I just avoid Reddit and Twitter nowadays for real.
I literally was there on the 6th, and I'm like. I was hovering on that delete button. I'm like, but I got the Mega Construct subreddit.
Yeah. See, I'm glad you brought up this idea of categorizing things and this whole identity politics that we're kind of it's been taken over everything, because that's one thing that really inspired me to make this podcast, was that people just weren't listening to each other. People were hearing, oh, you voted for Trump, and then assuming 1,000 things about people. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to... This is my perfect platform to get people on, because I can get someone like you, I can get someone who's very left-leaning, I can get people from all different ideologies and sit down and talk and dissect what you believe, so that people start to realize that, okay, just because someone identifies as a Democrat doesn't mean that they check all these boxes, and just because someone voted for Trump doesn't mean they check all these boxes. We gotta start realizing that people are individuals. We don't all fit into these prepackaged things, like you said.
Yeah. And I was going to say, this in poll, is kind of how it's generally described. And, it goes a lot further, because most people think of that and they think, okay, intersectionality, BLM, and whatever, but it goes a lot deeper. Mm-hmm. Identity politics isn't, maybe just about, what race or what skin color, what sexual orientation. It's about, beliefs, too. It's really tribalism incarnate. And so I think the solution to this is, and this goes for pretty much everyone, whether you're left, whether you're right, you need to stop saying, I'm a this. Mm-hmm. That is the easiest way for someone to automatically. You have to go a little bit deeper. Basically, what I was saying is everyone really kind of needs to take some time before they start talking about this and reflect and think, okay, not what do or who do I stand for, what specific institutions do I support. It's got to be, what ideas am I fighting for? Yes. What do I picture an ideal society being?
Yes. What are my ideals, and how are we going to get there?
And this isn't, people really got to think a lot further than, okay, well, I agree with this guy. It's like, you got to kind of sit down, and of course everyone's going to come up with different things. Right. It's just,
that's the beauty
different
of it.
Experiences.
That's the beauty of it, is that we can all come up with different ideas and propose them to each other, and that's how we learn. Mm-hmm. That's how we learn, is by hearing more ideas. That's why this whole echo chamber thing that social media grants people is the worst thing in human history. Frankly, it very well could be, at least, is that because it allows people to not expose themselves to outside ideas. If someone disagrees with you, block. You can block them. Yeah. You can block them. Twitter can ban them. Like, this stuff is crazy, that we shut out people who disagree with us. I think a fundamental thing that we need to start doing is, instead of deplatforming people, instead of silencing people, we need to explain why they're wrong. Because why do we deplatform people? Like, what's the reason? Because
we're scared of what they have to say.
Because we don't want other people to be influenced by them, right?
Exactly.
So how do we keep people from being influenced by a dumb idea? You tell them a smart idea and explain why your idea is right. It's absurd. It's just absurd to me that this isn't taking place and that people don't realize this, but that's part of why I wanted to do this, is to be able to talk about stuff like this, because I want to hear what everyone says. I want to hear what the most far-right person has to say. I want to hear what the most far-left person has to say, and everything in the middle. Once you hear all these different ideas, then you sit down and think to yourself and you say, okay, so that's those people's ideals. Now, what are my ideals based on what I've just heard?
Exactly. And this is honestly, I feel like I've had to kind of come to a reckoning several times, because, in 2016, I'm pretty sure me and a lot of other people who believe conservative things, I'm not going to say conservatives. Right. No, the correct term is people who whatever.
People who identify.
No, people who identify with conservative beliefs. Right. Make it stretch it out. But no, it was typical, just straight, Trump 2020, and a lot of it, I feel like I would have been a little more critical if I didn't feel almost kind of backed into a corner or like kind of forced to defend him. But I'm starting to realize.
Why is that?
Well, it's not. I'm not particularly blaming anybody but myself for that. And that's what I think I've had to kind of learn is like.
But what made you feel like you were backed into a corner?
It's more like when you concede that he has done one bad thing or something like that. It's like you kind of open the floodgates. It's like, see, he's a shit president, and you start going on. And it's like, well, no, and it's really kind of hard to criticize him when all you're seeing is just outlandish, kind of criticisms or allegations like hailed against him. Like, okay, can we like actually look at, because he did something that there's a lot of things that he probably did that I would be like, whoa, what the hell, and really I think I can kind of come to terms as like, okay, I don't have to, defend this guy anymore, and I can look at, now that everything's the way it is, I can kind of go, all right, now that I'm here, I've kind of gotten my headspace, now I understand what I believe, and now I can look and see what he does that actually aligns with that, and what he doesn't. And if I went back and retroactively looked at his stuff, I'd probably find a lot of things that I'd be like, disagreeing with now.
I think what that could partly be is because Trump got a lot of hate. Up front, there was all kinds of hate about Trump, so it almost felt like if you were someone who voted for him or kind of liked him, it almost felt like you had to defend him. Yeah. Me and Whit were talking about this the other day, that it's like people attacking Trump, I think, is what caused a lot of people to be so adamantly pro-Trump. Yeah. Is because half the population is telling them that they're racist and that Trump's a terrible person, so then you're sitting here and you're like, no, you're going to rise up and you're going to match that energy.
This is exactly what I think, and I kind of wanted, let's get back to what happened in the Capitol. Yeah. Is these people basically, you've got an entirely Democratic-controlled House that are working with giant corporations, so they've been locked down, so they don't have their livelihood, they don't feel like they have, they're not being treated with dignity, they have lost their jobs, and
these are the people that went to the Capitol.
Yes, they've lost their jobs. They've lost pretty much the only guy they thought was standing up for him, and then on top of all that, they don't even have a place to vent because they're getting censored and deplatformed for basically, how dare you assume this happened? Yeah. And honestly, to the people that did this, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? Yeah. You've backed a cat into the corner. You're gonna have to expect them to attack, and these people are acting like this was either the most unprecedented thing ever, which I can kind of see, because
it happened in the 80s. I don't remember the exact details. I was just reading about this the other day. Trent sent me something on it. But basically, a very similar thing, almost the same thing happened back in, I want to say it was the 80s, but it was the left showing up to the Capitol.
That was Black Panthers,
to dispute. I don't think that was.
No, that was for. I was thinking
it was a very similar idea where people on the left showed up to the Capitol because they weren't happy with results, and they were. I don't remember if they went to the extent of breaking in and breaking windows like happened this time. Yeah. But it's a very similar idea. But no one's mentioning that. No one's mentioning the fact that if the election results don't seem right, maybe we should show up. If you believe that the democratic process didn't go as planned, what else can you do but show up to the source of the problem? That's why I love that video you sent me this morning. I'll put a link to that video in the description just for anyone who wants to watch it. But when that guy was saying how we going to the source of the problem, I was like, yes, exactly. What would you rather these people do if they feel like the United States democratic process didn't go through how it should? Then show up to the Senate.
For how pissed off these people are, I am actually surprised that they were as tame as they were. Yeah, they were shoving cops. They were, busting windows, and I'm hearing from people like, oh, they planted pipe bombs. Like,
that's a rumor. I haven't heard any evidence.
If you want to be the party of evidence, I want to see those fucking pipe bombs before I believe it.
I haven't seen a shred of evidence about that.
Exactly. But basically, they walked in, and if you look at some of these pictures, they're kind of behaving like fifth graders on a field trip, but it looked like just an unauthorized guided tour, is basically what it is. People were taking pictures, they were just kind of walking around. It was almost like they were just kind of like having fun in there, all the pictures I see in there, smiling, a few of them, the poor woman that got shot, I don't know what happened over there. The climbing the wall seemed a little World War Z to me, but like if you actually go inside the Capitol building, a lot of what I saw was just people kind of like going around, messing with things and kind of doing, just being silly or something.
Yeah, it's like this is a serious thing and you're walking around being silly. I thought that was kind of odd. Like if you're really this mad about it, That was an interesting thing that took place there.
I think and this is when I saw it wasn't organized. These people are they have no idea what to do now. Yeah. Like they feel like they've pretty much lost everything at this point. They've got nothing more to lose. Hell, I mean, go to jail, they'll take care of me at least. I mean, shit, I'm not going to starve to death because I'm out of work.
Because what they see is the potential in something like China. Because if you look at China and how crazy China is, when people see our Democratic Party, when they start talking about all these socialist things, I think you're exaggerating the issue, but I think this is how these people feel, is they feel like we're moving they feel like the country that they're living in is moving in a direction that they can't tolerate, so they have to do something about it.
Exactly.
They have to do something about it.
I feel like there is some credence there, especially with the social credit score system, if you know what that is in China, where it's like, do bad
Have you seen the One-Child Policy documentary?
No, I haven't.
Bro, there's a whole documentary on Netflix. I recommend anyone watch it.
It's basically, I knew there was some, do you remember at karate, there was what was her name? She's this woman that basically, she adopted 3 girls from China because they were second born. And they were going to be. I think there's a rule where they got to kill off the second born child.
Bro, watch that documentary for real. It goes deep into all this, and I think that shows that there is a reason to be afraid of something like our Democratic Party. I don't think our Democratic Party is something that you should necessarily be terrified of right now, but if they keep pushing the boundary, if they keep moving the goalpost, we have to be careful. We have to be careful with this whole idea of utilitarianism and trying to make the many be responsible for each other's happiness.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a deep conversation. Collectivism versus individualism. That's a whole nother discussion, but I think that's something that we have to start looking at. That's something we have to start thinking about and talking about.
Something that really kind of is unnerving is moral tyranny, basically. I think is what it is. Where you look at these things, people with good intentions are the worst people at executing those intentions. I'm going to be completely honest.
I think there's a lot of people with good intentions that execute them well, but there's way more people with good intentions that don't know how to execute them well.
Or this is kind of what I was worried about with these kind of protests. Is like, sure, I might agree with some sentiment of these people, but if they start going like, well, Antifa's doing it, so we might as well. It's like you're kind of losing sight of who you are.
Yeah,
a little bit. And that's really, that can go for anything. But kind of what I want to do, talk about a little bit, was this kind of idea of almost losing my train of thought here.
No, you're good.
Sorry. But yeah, specifically in China with the social credit score, I think we're kind of seeing mirrored almost in a very infantile phase, but it's getting worse. It's things that were completely acceptable to say 10 years ago are now almost unspeakable.
Yeah.
People are being hunted down, kind of removed from their jobs, livelihoods destroyed over wrong thing, basically. Political dissidents. And I've seen a lot of people, online, things like that. It's like, all Trump supporters should go to prison. And it's like, really? Like,
no, I don't. I'm not even going to entertain that thought. That is ridiculous.
I don't care what you think, but jailing political dissidents has a bad historical track record.
Yeah, it's just blatantly obvious why that's wrong. We shouldn't be jailing people for what they think. Period. There should be no. If someone's, I don't care what you think, you shouldn't go to jail for what you think. If you start acting upon certain things, then now we can talk about it.
Yeah, of course, free speech.
Now we can talk about that. Basic free speech, but we're already seeing the degradation of the First Amendment right now.
Yeah,
it's happening in our society right now.
The whole hate speech isn't free speech thing. And it's like, okay, well, then how do you define hate speech? And very few people can, or almost nobody. I don't think there's any legal definition to it. And when you start having these vague, ambiguous terms that can be applicable to anything, you set the stage for this exact kind of behavior that people are worried about. And this is something that you see a lot with people in power, is like, hey, you're doing this. No, idiot. No, we're not, while they're doing it. And then they're going to laugh at you later.
Because people don't fact check.
A lot of that, too.
Presidential debates were full of both Trump and Biden saying things that they did or didn't do that if you just Google it real quick, it's very obvious that it's a lie. Yeah. Which, the debate was a joke. That was a joke. We got to restructure that. We got to restructure that.
Oh, wow. Definitely. So I know a lot of people with in the right now are talking about, you know, possible solutions to, you know, where do we go from here if we feel like we're about to be stomped on by it's at this point one party holds a singular majority over the, you know, the House legislation, and if they start packing the courts, if you remember that Joe Biden never ever would respond to that question about packing the courts, and I feel like it's definitely something that's on their agenda. If they have that, you know, a lot of people don't really know what to do.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna talk about what should be done, I definitely want to start with secession, because we had said we wanted to talk about secession. I think before we get there, we need to talk about like why. We need to talk about the threat at hand, which is just division. It's just blatant division where people just fundamentally disagree about the role of government.
Yeah, we'll let's go back to all these reactionary posts about what happened. What you're going to see, I think Tim Pool kind of illustrated this recently, where basically it's what's happening here is, you know, this majority is caused basically for, you know, whatever the reasons that we specified, people decided to storm the Capitol, and what that's going to do is, you saw how quickly they went back in there. They were absolutely, like, filled with, and almost had the opposite effect that these people wanted to have. Because these people were filled with, you know, some kind of, like, otherworldly determination to get right back in there, certify this guy as quickly as possible, and then start working on, like, stamping these people out. And so what I feel like we're going to see is this kind of immediate, now hopefully it simmers down. This is kind of where I was going with entropy that we were talking about earlier, where these people are going to start reacting by doing more of the thing that they were doing that caused these people to come here. And so what you're going to see is then these people are going to respond with more force, and it's going to go back and forth. And the way you got to kind of cool that down, if we're talking about solutions that are kind of need more participation than they currently have.
What do you mean by that?
People need to start doing it, and they're not going to. And a large majority of people need to, you know, get off just Twitter and Reddit and things like that, because these sites, and I kind of wanted to illustrate this earlier, kind of talk about this a little bit more, when we were talking about social media, is I think a lot of it too is you're just seeing words on a screen that make you angry. You're not seeing the face behind it. You're not having these conversations. You're not thinking about being civil. You're just thinking, this idea makes me angry. I'm going to respond with what's ever on my mind. And sometimes what's on your mind is kind of dog shit, unless you can figure out how to articulate it, basically.
Social media, it's like, I feel like social media almost encourages people to just make these small comments, to respond really quick. People aren't taking the time to really dissect each other's arguments and to really think about what's behind this kind of stuff. If someone comes out and says that Trump is a bad president, am I going to sit down and think, I wonder why they might think that? No, if I'm a Trump supporter, I'm going to respond instantly. Respond instantly,
or, you know, just kind of just shake your head and move on. It's almost like it's either, you know, go in there and respond with nothing, or just be like, it's not worth my time.
Social media is just a terrible method of communicating between human beings. And I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if we need to. I think as a society, it might be best to just do away with social media. I don't know how honestly,
I've been thinking, I'm like, you know, it's kind of like a nice wishful thinking. It's like, what if Twitter just shut off? What if the servers just went offline?
The problem is that social media allows people to hear about a lot of things too, because like we were talking about with China, without social media, I wouldn't know a lot of stuff about China.
It's
a give and take. It's a give and take. Is the more access to information people have, that like access to information seems like a fundamentally good thing, but we're almost witnessing that maybe it's not.
Yeah. I kind of want to steer.
Actually, before I want to go back on that. I don't think access to information could. I don't think that is even possibly a bad thing. It's when you allow people who don't have anything to do with an issue, who know nothing about this stuff, to make opinions about information. So if I go online and I read something that happened in the world, me going and then reading other people's opinions on it is the problem. It's almost like social media is the problem, but news on your phone is a good thing. Like news apps assuming they're not biased, of course.
Yeah.
Which that's a whole nother issue.
Which I don't think you're ever going to get a truly unbiased. You can see a lot of people like, oh, well, this site now, it's like none of them are really reputable. Bias is inevitable.
It is.
And some people, don't even take into consideration their own bias. They just kind of accept whatever doctrines they believe is fact.
Right.
But I feel like I'm getting a little bit on a segue talking about social media. We'll get back to that, but really what I was kind of emphasizing is that right now it is an agent of entropy.
Social media is?
Yes, because we're seeing, a bunch of, where was I? A bunch of reactionary posts, which is going to kind of fuel the flames of this fire. And so what I was thinking, is people kind of need to stop posting these things that's going to inflame, more people. Mm-hmm. People need to stop basically looking at this and just kind of saying whatever's on their mind. Look at, the news or read headlines, basically.
Yes, please, for the love of God, if you're going to read a headline and then post the article, read the full article. And check the person who wrote the article, check who they are.
Yeah.
That's important. That's very important.
Yeah, it's like I've looked at a lot of people. It's like they'll link me 7 articles and be like, see? I'm like, did you read any of these?
Yeah, for real.
But back to it kind of being, what was I saying? Okay, so yeah, basically what I was saying before about kind of meditating almost on your beliefs, kind of just, and I think this is actually something my uncle kind of was telling me about, is if we just like sit for like 5 minutes a day. Like, we don't ever get that time to ourselves. Anytime we're thinking about politics, it's because we're being influenced by people's opinions on it.
Or we're talking.
We're engaging in it without kind of, I guess, letting it kind of sink in. Letting what you've seen, what you've experienced really sink in. Just sit there, maybe by yourself. And it's amazing to me that we've had all this time, indoors to think about these things, and so few people have. They're consuming, things. They're watching shows.
People are constantly consuming things instead of thinking and producing.
Yes, exactly. Producing. Yeah. People need to start producing. This is something I've learned is write a book sometime in your life.
Oh, I plan on it. For real, I've thought about this a lot. I want to write a book one day. That'd be cool.
I'm writing a book right now, so we'll see how it comes.
We'll
see how it goes. But yeah, no, it's not necessarily the product itself. It's not just publishing the book and selling it. That's not what matters. It's getting your ideas. Because when you're forced, or when you're creating, you're almost forced to think about what you create, unless you're Disney.
They make some good movies, though. You gotta give them that. You gotta give them that.
Squeeze the talent out of young blood and just... I'm not even sure how accurate that joke was, because even these people are thinking about, what they put in. Because you've got to, you basically you have to kind of reflect. You're putting yourself in that book, so you've kind of got to discern. Like, you've got to figure out what exactly you're doing with it. You've got to have something to put down
this. Like a long form talk like this. If there are inconsistencies with things I believe or you believe in a long form talk, they'll come out.
Yeah,
you'll realize like, oh wait, maybe this opinion I hold actually isn't correct. Because once you get deep into the weeds, like, oh, this doesn't line up. And I think what's important is back to like consuming and producing is people are consuming ideas instead of producing ideas.
Yes.
I want to hear some new ideas, bro. I'm tired of hearing the same old arguments from people like I don't want to say the right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The same old arguments from this and that. Let's hear some new ideas. Sit down and think. Anyone, no matter who you are, just sit down and think about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Really kind of, and this is what I was talking about earlier, kind of think about what you believe in and stop kind of associating with groups. White supremacists are white supremacists, right? Confederacies. I actually want to talk about confederacies in a little bit. Okay. But, racists are racists, bigots are bigots. They, you can't really, just merge the two groups without there being inconsistencies.
Right.
You see a lot of people who will unironically go on social media. They'll post the thin blue line, the Gadsden flag, the Confederate flag, and the Nazi flag, and they'll be like, I see no difference.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You don't see an ounce of difference?
I was talking, I saw a comment, it was basically like, what exactly did he say? He's like, all Nazis must be purged from this country. It's like, That's great and all, but I feel like you have no ability to discern what a conservative is from a Nazi.
Right.
And they're like, what was it? Or I said that, I have zero faith in the people in power and the people that support those people, and yourself included, probably, to be able to discern between these two groups.
Right.
And he goes, oh, no, I can discern, I just see no difference. Like,
that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Exactly.
If you think conservative ideology and Nazi ideology are the same, I don't understand.
And even if we look at conservative, that was a weird voice crack. Even if we look at conservative ideology, there's so much conservative that can kind of there's a lot of ideas in conservatism. And that's another thing.
That's such a broad bubble.
Exactly.
Conservatism.
Exactly.
How do you define conservatism? Especially in the modern age.
People are going to have a lot of different, opinions on that. And, traditional conservatives, a lot of the what is being conserved crowd is looking at, kind of neoconservatives and being like, okay, well, you guys are, what the hell are you doing? Why are you even calling yourselves conservatives? And like, okay, well, we're calling ourselves conservatives because
what's the ideology behind neoconservatism?
So, neoconservatives, actually, to be honest, I'm a little more in the camp that they don't really have anything going for them. It's like they'll just kind of readily accept anything in order. It's almost like they kind of just see themselves as a group that needs to survive, and they'll do that by trading in, exchanging what they believe in for something else this day. I just think a lot of them are kind of inconsistent, and they're willing to move with the goalposts. They're not consistent, and what you'll find is that, neoconservative, maybe even 4 years ago, and neoconservative now are probably pretty different.
Okay, yeah, because I'm not really familiar with.
I feel like neoconservative
so I don't really have much to say on that.
It's not an idea; it's a group. That's how I feel about that. The ideas are really there's a lot in there, and so this is why it's dangerous to even use things like conservative, liberal, leftist, social democrat, the like.
I don't think there's a place for it in modern discourse. I really don't think. I don't think those terms really. They don't say anything anymore.
Yeah.
When you say conservative, when you say liberal, I don't think that really. You're not saying anything when you say.
But
that.
people will take it as something.
Yeah.
And that's what that's the huge problem. And so when you have this idea of entropy, I think that's really the best way we're going to be. But people don't want to do that. People don't really want to they don't want to put in the legwork to kind of really figure themselves out. Because a lot of it makes people uncomfortable. Hell, it made me uncomfortable, trying to sit through and be like, wow, it's a lot more complicated than I thought it was.
These are deep issues.
Really deep. And
very complex.
This is exactly what I was arguing, a little bit about, basically about, transgender ideology. And what I realized is that a lot of these surface level issues that you take a side on, you're wrong on this side because of this according to these people, and vice versa, where basically it's like the only way to resolve this argument is to
give me an example of what you just said. I don't follow.
Okay, so I kind of want to talk about let's say that these people already accept the fact that gender identity is a fact, right? And
gender identity is a fact. What do you mean?
Okay, gender identity. Basically, they'll kind of say that there's this thing called gender identity, that gender and sex are two different things.
Gender and sex are two different things. Okay.
That there's like a whole bunch of genders out there, and it kind of changes. It's not really tangible at all. There's no way to measure it besides surveys or just talking to people, which is it's really kind of inconsistent. Honestly, what I believe. It's like, well, then what is it? It just sounds completely arbitrary to me. And talking to this person, it's like, well, no, it's not, because blah blah blah. And basically, to get to the bottom of it, you have to go so deep into like what the roots of everything, because that's where the disagreement is. Yeah. It's the fundamental roots. Like, for instance, the Black Lives Matter movement. If you want to say, call into question their methods, is like they're going to say, well, our methods are necessary because of these things.
Right.
And as long as they accept those roots as fact, you are never going to change their opinion on surface level things.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of what we're seeing in modern society is, when I brought up like individualism and collectivism earlier, that's just because that's something I've been thinking about a lot. Is it's like something like masks, for example.
Yeah.
Mandating masks. If you mandate masks, you're forcing people to change themselves to fit the collective instead of letting them make their own choice and educating them. And this is something that I think we really need to think about in America, is instead of forcing people to do things that we think are correct, giving them the choice whether or not to do them, and then educating them on why they should do it. Don't tell me that I have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Explain to me why I ought to wear a mask.
And there's a lot of discourse to be had there. Discourse that we're probably not going to really delve too deep into.
We're touching on a lot of issues here, and I definitely want to get to secession pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're kind of getting on there. We're close.
There's a lot of bases to cover because, like we said, that's another thing. Is it's like as much as we may only want to talk about 5 things, well, you can't talk about these 5 things without touching on these other 30 things that are involved in each one of these issues.
And it's there's not, obviously we don't have a whole lot of time to cover, so it's kind of, we're going, mile wide, inch deep, as my 7th grade language arts teacher would say.
Yeah, and that's when we get to... Let's just go into secession right now, because I want to go deep on this. I want to do a deep dive into this and think about all possible options. So if there's anything that we want to clarify to set ourselves up for this, go ahead and say.
Actually, yeah. So when we were talking about what we were earlier about forcing people to do these things, it's kind of goes back to the moral tyranny of it. Right. And so I'm going to say this up front because I don't think I've really kind of made myself clear on exactly what I am. There's a thing called basically voluntarism, where it's kind of like, let me do what I'm going to do as long as it doesn't interfere with what you're going to do.
Yes,
so kind of people,
ideology.
People basically just want to be left alone in this kind of subset, and this is kind of what I disagree with a lot of. What's the right term? Social conservatives, where it's like, look, these people are going to do, it's basically people that restrict gay marriage on principle, and it's like, well, I'm inclined to agree with some of those principles. I don't agree with forcing those principles on these people.
Yes. Now, where do we draw the line? This is something I was thinking about. This very issue earlier today is, where do we draw the line between gay marriage and murder in terms of what's legal based on morality? Because if you're someone who thinks that gay marriage is immoral, and you're someone who thinks murder is immoral, then you're going to say, okay, let's make both those things illegal. But
I do.
Where do we draw the line?
I do have a line.
Where should we? You think?
Yeah. So basically, when we look at things like gay marriage, these are decisions you are making for yourself.
Yes.
Murder is something you are making. It's a decision. You are overriding somene's free will. You are stripping away their life, basically. Anything, any choices they were going to make are gone. So basically, and this is something I was actually, the debate I was having with this one person about transgenderisms. Basically, they used something that I kind of liked. My right to swing ends at your face.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Because that's what when I was thinking about this earlier today, that's kind of what I settled on, is that it comes down to freedoms. And that we should all be free. I mean, my ideal, I'm fairly libertarian. I think people should be free. Do what you want to do until you impede on the freedoms of others. And when other people's freedoms start being taken away, whether it's their freedom to life, their freedom to anything, their freedom to anything, I should not be able to impede on your freedoms as long as you... And I don't impede on mine either.
This is something actually, because there is a very hard set in line that we can use, and it's our, according to the Constitution, our God-given rights. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If any of those things are taken not just by the government, but by people, that's wrong. And this is what I see a lot with people like free speech. Like, oh, free speech, doesn't protect you from punishment for that speech. Yes, it fucking does. Yeah, it literally does. I don't understand how these people can see that and think that they're, it's only from the government. That's not true, because your right to life is protected from not just the government, but from other people. You can't kill anybody.
And you know what I want to touch on? I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just want to say one more thing. It is slavery, too, is because you are infringing upon someone else's God-given rights. That is exactly why that should have been deemed unconstitutional at the start. And I feel like we were kind of given the groundwork to do that.
Yeah, and I think what's important in relation to this issue is when you talk about how free speech doesn't mean you're right against consequences of that speech. Yeah. I've heard the argument that people should be legally allowed to say what they want to say, but if something like Twitter, Instagram wants to ban them, that's okay, and I think that's messed up. I think we have it backwards. We have it backwards. Why should companies be able to play the role of government? If government's role is to punish people that are doing things that society deems shouldn't be allowed to do, if our government is doing the right thing by not censoring people with speech. Why are we letting corporations take the role of government and punish these people? If someone's saying something wrong, like I said earlier, correct their speech. Yeah. Don't stop them from speaking. Because we agree that our government shouldn't be able to stop people from speaking, so why should you be able to stop me from speaking? This is
where it gets complicated, because yes, these are companies. Oh, by the way, curveball, I fucking hate corporations as a capitalist. Shocker. I know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can go into that in more detail.
Yeah, I want to touch on something very specific, but I think you're about to say it.
So, yeah, it's basically the idea of, yes, these are corporations, but this is also uncharted territory. This is the internet, and this isn't just platforms of speech. This is also search engines that are modifying results. And I think there's a certain article that was recently fought over with Twitter and Facebook, basically. I heard they weren't, basically not allowed to silence political dissidents anymore. Or else they'll lose their protections, because they do have protections in place, from what I understand. Could be really wrong, but this is what I believe I know.
Okay.
And so those are really the two sides of the coin. Is that this is a new place. This might as well be a town square, and it can't be.
I think Rogan said it well when he said that these things are at the point that they can be considered public services.
Exactly.
It's like you can't ban someone from riding the public bus because they believe a certain thing and they say certain things, just like you shouldn't be able to ban someone from Twitter, even though these are corporations. And it's so complicated because these are private individuals. I'm all about, again, not restricting someone. If I start a business, don't tell me how to run my business. But when I start banning you from my platform, I am impeding on your liberties. I'm impeding on your liberties. And that's a problem.
So I think there was a solution to that. I think actually my father touched on this a little bit, where it's like the source code for Twitter basically needs to be kind of public domain. The idea of these social media sites, there has to be a control. And if we're talking about in terms of experiments, where you have this variable,
not just be ripped off.
This variable,
do you think?
Well, here's the thing: is that's kind of, in all fairness, okay. I believe. Yeah, if there are a bunch of, sites or all over the place, if it's oversaturated with public, discourse, basically, you're not going to be able to control all of them. There are going to be so many forums out there of just, random people talking wherever. I think that's a good thing that the distribution of public discourse is not in the hands of these very few oligarchical tech companies.
if we did it right, this could be a good thing. If we made the source code public, but enacted laws like I don't know if copyright laws would apply to this, but keep people from making a Twitter ripoff once the Twitter source code goes viral, or once it becomes public. Don't let people make direct copies of it, and I think that would just end up coming down to a copyright or trademark type issue. Where can we draw the line of, is this a ripoff or is this not?
Which is
and I think that's a conversation that could be had when we get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Was that a segue? Did we just where were we branching off from?
We were trying to get to secession. I don't.
That's right. Okay, so oh boy. Yeah, we really took a little dive. Okay, so basically back to the, personal liberties,
yes.
Where my right to swing ends. And there's a whole, I think the lockdowns are a good place to look at this. People are, talking about mandating these lockdowns, and from what I've heard, it's like, I was talking to this kid where it's, I said something about, I think these lockdowns are stupid. He goes, what? We need more lockdowns. I'm like, what? I mean, really, it's kind of shocking to think that people actually like to be forced indoors, and like other people, it's kind of, I think what I saw is, it's very loosely related, the crabs in a bucket mentality.
Explain.
So, what I understand about this crabs in a bucket mentality is when you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and one tries to swim out, the other crabs will pull him down to prevent him from avoiding a predicament that they are also in. And so it's basically, it's the idea of kind of, if I'm doing this, you have to too. I can't not participate in society if everyone else is,
Yeah.
Kind of,
I'm just, so I understand the crabs in a bucket mentality, but who has this mentality?
People that are kind of or people that are supporting enforcing these lockdowns because they think that there's a virus out there that's going to kill all their grandmas. Which, to be fair...
So in this analogy, who's the crab that's getting out, and who's pulling them down?
Libertarians generally, I would assume, do not want these restrictions. Don't want these lockdowns. If they want to quarantine, if they want to basically kind of social distance or whatever, or wear their masks, they can. But they don't want to be mandated. They don't want it to be. So they want to be able to go out. People want to work. Anybody who's really like protesting these lockdowns is because their livelihood is like slowly eroding, and so they want to protect this. And people are thinking that's dangerous and reckless.
Yeah, people say you can't go out. You can't go outside because I'm not going outside. I don't want to get the virus. I don't want to give it to people.
Pretty much. And this is, I think, now we can kind of start to ease into secession, because if we have a country full of two very conflicting ideals, some people want the restrictions in place. They don't want other people to be walking out to protect their safety because they believe this thing is really deadly. And other people are like, look, I've got my chances of dying are negligible.
Yeah,
pretty much negligible, near zero. Yes. Why can't I go out and work?
Yeah,
man, this is actually what I said.
Government as soon as governments started forcing businesses to close, that was huge. We can't be doing that. We can't be doing that.
Yeah.
No, this can't happen again. We can't let that happen again as a country.
This is something I said is, when did the risk of dying in a car crash ever stop us from driving? Why didn't the government close down roads? More people die in car crashes. There's a higher percentage that you will die in a car crash than dying of COVID. Dying in a plane crash, even. God, driving is dangerous. It really is. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that because they do it so often, But every once in a while, someone falls asleep on the wheel, someone's had too much to drink, someone veers in the left lane or when they're supposed to be left lane, veer into oncoming traffic.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too deep into Corona and the lockdowns right now, because I just think there is so much to unpack there.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you're right.
There's a lot to unpack when we get into there's a lot of very deep fundamental ideas behind this, utilitarian ideas, and that's something that I don't know, man. I've been struggling with that a lot lately. Is that the Democratic Party is trying to brainwash people into being utilitarians almost, in convincing people that sacrificing their own happiness for the greater good is okay. And a lot of people, when they hear me say that in a bad light, they go, "Wait, you don't think sacrificing your happiness for the good of for the greater good is a good thing?" No, I don't think it is. I don't think sacrificing your own well-being for the good of those around you is necessarily a good thing. That's not a noble thing to do, and that is I'm going to lose a ton of people.
Let's not just pin it on the Democrats, because Republicans are in there. These parties do not really have much of a quarrel with each other. I mean, we've seen that. They'll put on a show. They'll put on a show, you have things like, there's obviously going to be disagreements, but overall, it's basically Democrats have an agenda, and Republicans, we'll talk about it, they'll make a big steam about it, but they're not going to do anything. They never have. People like Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney, and...
They make a big steam about what?
Well, they'll say basically that they disagree. Well, actually, not even anymore. You look at Mitt Romney out there, who's basically, on the side of, he's going out there chanting Black Lives Matter and telling you to wear your masks. And
Mitt Romney is?
Yeah, Mitt Romney.
Really? I didn't hear about this.
Well, it's so it's Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, John McCain, may he rest in piss. These people are not. They're not the Republican. They're not. If you're a conservative, they're not people you want to rely on. They're these people, Republicans, Democrats. I don't want to be like both sides or whatever. But these people are not as divided as you think they are.
What I'm curious is, what I see is that the Democratic Party, getting back to the Democratic Party, it's kind of instilling this idea of utilitarianism through things like masks, through heavy taxation, through things like social health care, through welfare, through all these issues of taking away from people to give to others. And I used to be all about it. I used to think that was a great ideology, but just the more that I've lived on this earth, it's like, I want to do my thing.
Yeah,
I don't want to have to. I don't know, and it's not that I disagree with taxes, but what I wanted to get to was when I originally said that, you implied that the conservatives, not conservatives, but the GOP. I'm going to say the GOP.
Okay, go ahead.
You implied that they were doing a similar thing. How so?
Well, not that they're doing a similar thing. They're not doing anything in their own right. They're just kind of going along with whatever happening. They'll blow smoke about it. They'll sit here and say that they oppose these things, but they don't. They don't ever actually take action. They are basically the Republican Party, the old old guard Republican Party,
Yeah.
the GOP, is just... It's very ineffective. It's downright incompetent, coming from a conservative or someone who generally aligns with those beliefs.
Right.
They're not doing...
Because just what I'm getting at is that what we see from figureheads of the GOP, they aren't preaching these utilitarian ideas. That's all I was getting at, was that when I said that the Democratic Party leaders were instilling these ideas in people, you implied that the GOP leaders would. Is that not what you meant? Did I misunderstand?
I think
because I don't see that coming from them.
Honestly, I think you're a little bit right. I was kind of where I was really getting at is that some of these people are basically going along with the goalposts. You know, here's Democrats, they're doing this, and so Republicans are like, well, okay.
Yeah, that's our progressive society.
Yeah.
And I think the term progressive needs to go away.
Yeah.
Because progress implies an end goal, and
this is why
say that one party is progressive is almost like implying that party is the only one that's heading towards some sort of ideal goal, and we need to get away from that. We need to get away from this idea of progress. We need to move towards the idea of
progressing toward what?
You're not a conservative. You're not a progressive. We're all trying to do what's best for our country, for our world, for ourselves. Whatever your values are, you're trying. Whatever you value, that's what you're working towards. If you value, I don't know what the end goal of progressivism is.
I was getting to say that. It's like you say you're a progressive. Progressing toward what exactly?
Full equality. I think some people would answer.
Do you not? We have equal protection of the law. Do we not?
And I think what they would say is that it's not being upheld properly.
Right. Which I'm curious if they're going to maintain that over the next 4 years. If they have, well, they basically, they're going to be people, obviously, and I think that this new establishment is not going to keep a lot of the promises that they've made. They're just saying these things. Joe Biden is kind of very inconsistent. Nobody knows what he actually believes. His campaign was absent. He was a geriatric old man, and people voted for that. They thought this boogeyman Trump over here was so bad, they were willing to accept someone who has probably never had an original thought in his life, doesn't have any clear vision, just says, I'm not that guy. All right, peace out. I'll see you in a year.
I don't even think that it's that most people, I wouldn't say that they were willing to accept that. They saw the Democratic Party being in control over Trump being in control. It's not Biden. I don't see anyone out here saying that Biden is the answer to our problems. No, it's the people behind Biden that they think are the answer.
Even behind the people behind Biden are, if you look at their positions from before Trump's inauguration and to after, these people are not. They're not. Well, they're obviously pushing for policies and things like that, but these policies are ultimately going to just benefit themselves, regardless of who else. Well, let's look at basically a lot of lobbying for corporations. Basically, they're kind of working in tandem. It's really just to preserve their power. A lot of the things that they're doing.
When you say their policies before Trump's inauguration and after,
let's look at border security.
Let's
look at border security.
Yeah.
And I don't actually.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And I don't actually think they believe the things that they've said this presidency, because they've been saying our borders need to be secure, whatever, and then Trump gets in office, is like, come on, immigrants, let's go. Look at how awful these closed borders are. We need to open up. And I think they're just kind of saying these things to get the support of people. They are.
It's about power.
It's exactly, and they've convinced these people that the best way to get what they want is to give these people more power. And so anything that goes against that, if you look at a lot of libertarian leftists, I don't think they are going to be very satisfied with this inauguration. They are not going to get what they want at all.
Do you think that, or do you think they might? I think if
they
move towards social issues and things like drug legalization, a lot of left people are going to be like, bet.
Well, yeah, I think that we should make a distinction. Obviously, there are people in the Senate now. There are people basically now in legislation that are leftist, like Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I don't think these people just want power. I think they have an ideology they want to push.
Bernie is one that, above any other person in the Democratic Party, he genuinely seems to have people's best interest in mind. Whether you disagree with his methods, he's one of the only ones that I can listen to him speak and feel like he genuinely cares about the population of the United States.
This is what I'm saying. So you have people like that, but then you have Pelosi and Schumer, and these people still like those on top of Bernie. And there, of course, they're going to be, I'm not saying that everyone on the left loves these people and idolizes them, but you do see a lot of that.
Yeah.
And those people that think they're fighting for them, that think they're doing all these things for the good of the people, are going to be severely disappointed. And what I'm hoping to see is that these next 4 years will kind of wake some of these moderate left-leaning people up and be like, whoa, these people suck. Now, hopefully conservatives will wake up too. People, Republican, throw them out. Republicans, Democrats, whatever. And now we can kind of get on the topic of secession. Because what I was talking about with especially libertarians, I think really the solution here is kind of, if we don't want to be stepped on by these people, we really need, because we have a nation full of conflicting interests. And so
what are they? What are the conflicting interests? Specific. If we're going to do a deep dive on secession, I want to be very specific with every single part of this.
So I think collectivism versus individualism, that idea that, the group comes before the individual, and then the people that are prioritizing their well-being.
That is my primary reason I want to talk about secession, because in my... I want to get more into this and go further, but right now where I stand is I've been thinking about an individualist versus collectivist America, if it were split like that. But... Keep going.
So this is actually what I'm kind of...
We'll get there.
Yeah. So basically what I'm seeing is a lot of the collectivism, if you look at where basically the majority of the left-leaning population lies, if you were looking at red and blue demographics here, you're going to find that most of the blue, really, almost all of the blue comes from these heavy concentration in cities that far outweigh the populace of any surrounding area. Yeah. And so when these people are, they are fully embedded into the collectivist mindset. You look at New York; they are in full support of these lockdowns. You look in L.A. If they're going to be in support of these lockdowns, we need to, what's the flatten the curve thing? They're all in. They are, regardless of what it's doing. And so what you'll find is that, I don't know where I was going with that. But basically, on the contrary, you have these people who are like, okay, I just want to be left alone. And now that you have these cities, their representation is in power, and they are going to enforce these specific strongholds policies on the entire nation. Right. Most of it, if we're looking at the area around it, half the country, I don't know, about half the country doesn't want that. You are specifically fighting for this is really dangerous when you have complete control. Is basically you're fighting for the interests of half the country, and when you have something divided, it's basically on a core principle, not even a misunderstanding. There's no fundamental way a deeper fact checking or looking at these things will change these perspectives or come to one understanding.
It's like, what? You can't stay inside for a little bit to keep my grandma from dying?
These moral philosophies are going to clash, and so the only solution I see is to basically we take the individualists and we shove them over there. I think places, and this is what I'm saying. The states I'm going to name specifically: Florida, Texas, Ohio, Alabama. Well, I don't even know about Alabama, but Florida, Texas, Ohio, I think are states that would really like to...
Montana. I'm going to add that to the list.
Yeah, and
I've never been there, so I could be wrong by that from what I've heard.
Yeah, we can go on the other side of, New York, Oregon, California, Washington. We look at those places, full blue. Literally, if we just... Let's take our guys out of there and let them just do what they want over there.
How would we do this?
That's what I've been trying to figure out. The logistics of it is really the hard part.
Almost impossible.
Exactly.
But this is what we're here to talk about. Is the logistics of it. How do we do it?
So how do we do it? That's really...
Okay, before we say how do we do it, I think the only way to approach an issue like this is to say, what is our goal? Yeah. And how do we get there? So what is our goal here? Yeah. What are we trying to do? Are we just trying to divide the country into two parts? Because I don't think that's a terrible idea. Is that if we start with, okay, we want to divide the country into two parts. How do we do it? I think that's a good place to start.
Let's start with basically allowing whatever power structure is. We can't really. There's no feasible way to really kind of topple that at this point without getting massive amounts of backlash, right? Or massive amounts of pushback, basically.
You mean, taking down the United States government. There's no
This
way to do that.
Yeah,
Is that
this
what you're saying?
administration right now, illegitimate or legitimate, it's there.
Yes.
And one of the only solutions we have is our end goal is to preserve our liberty, right? And you see a lot of people like, this is attacking our democracy, referring to it's like, you know what, fuck democracy, I want liberty. And they are very different, and we can kind of go into that.
Yes.
The more majority tyranny, even by a small bit.
Bro. America is so deeply instilled with this romanticization of democracy.
Yes.
I messed up on the word
you see,
there,
it's
democracy.
It's never they're infringing upon our liberties. This is a threat to our democracy. That's always what it is. The Electoral College is a threat to our democracy. Yeah. This is a threat to our democracy. That's always what I see.
Okay, so we're gonna either divide the country or let a few states secede.
So this is really kind of where it gets is my prime goal right now is maintaining my liberty. I think the governor in Florida right now, I think the governor in Texas, Ted Cruz, Ron DeSantis, basically both of them, I think they understand that. I think, I don't generally like politicians in general, and I even find myself being a little naive to say that Ron DeSantis has our best interests in mind. But from what I've seen, some of the things he says, even some of our representatives right now.
Which state is he again?
Florida. He's the governor of Florida. Ron DeSantis. Yeah.
Duh.
I feel like hopefully, and I kind of want to relate. I'm like, dude, please, we just want to be out of this. Yeah. We don't want, and I don't know. Obviously, it's going to take some huge balls to be able to stand up to that. But you've seen it. A lot of these a lot of these states, especially all the ones that joined in that lawsuit, there's legislation. Regardless of what you think about the legitimate those laws, there are states. Almost had like 20 of them. It came down to 20 states, yes, that did not want whatever was going to happen. And these states are obviously...
What did they not want to happen?
Basically, they wanted to not certify these results of these elections. And generally, those states are going to be the states that also hold the values of the right, or the voluntarists, hopefully. And when I look at, see some of the things that Ron DeSantis has done, when he talks about if or even Ted Cruz too, when the government, basically the federal government, they said if they enforce a lockdown, we will not abide by a federal mandate. We will outright refuse it. Which, that's good news to me.
That is good news. Very good news.
I don't know specific policies for Ron DeSantis. He might be socially conservative, but if he's saying I will not tolerate a massive, government intervention, a government infringement on our rights, and that's great news. And so hopefully he doesn't, back down. Hopefully we can kind of, this again, the logistics of this are hard, and a lot of people are turned off because it's going to be such a massive kind of change. Like this is something completely unprecedented,
right?
And so really what it kind of comes down to is, if the people in Florida, most of them are generally, other than, Miami-Dade, which actually has turned up red recently.
Really?
Those Cubans, man.
yeah. The Cubans come over here and they vote conservative, for real.
Absolutely. They do not want to see, what happened to their own country happen again.
That should be very telling to people. That should be very telling.
Really. But so basically, you have specific, maybe 2 cities, I think, in Florida that are majority blue. And again, I say this as just kind of where we can kind of an estimate almost of what these people are going to believe.
Right.
And so really, I think these states, I think really it's Florida, Texas, and you said Montana. The logistics are going to be hard, but most of these people generally do want to be, left alone. Then we have right now, we are half the country is going unrepresented except for the officials in these states. So if they decide, and there's really, it's going to be hard to peacefully secede, because secession in a lot of people's minds means confederacy, and confederacy is ingrained in people's minds to mean slavery and all these things that the Confederate States of America meant.
Yeah, I think we have to decide if we want to even call it secession, or if we just want to come together as a country and decide to divide. This is something. Would it be better for a handful of states to say, "Hey, we're pulling out of the United States," or would it be better for the United States as a whole to say, "Hey, we're gonna split, and this is gonna happen"? And I don't know. I think secession would be easier. I think it would be much easier for say Texas to Florida. Let's say all of those states just dropped out of the United States. I think that would be the easiest way to do it for those states to make their own thing. But I think in terms of best long-term consequences, it might be better for us to say, okay, we're going to split the country down the middle. I don't know.
So here's
geographics is another hard thing.
Yeah, exactly. When we start, and a lot of these people is when you look at the maps of these places, it's like red, but then you have blue, 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 blue. Right? It's very spread out, and these people, it's like. We're trying to separate the. I can't even use oil and water here really because they don't mix. You can easily separate those, but like your bacon, basically you have ingredients of a cake here. It's a fucking cake, man. There's salt, there's fucking vinegar in this cake, but the cake's made. It's really really hard to separate those ingredients out. You have people, you have collectivists that are highly concentrated numbers smack dab in the middle of a bunch of individualists.
Moving people is hard. Like as
people
much
don't
as
want to move.
It seems like when I first thought about this, it was like, man, it would be so easy to just get people to move. But then it's like, no, it's hard to get people to move. People have jobs. People are around their family. People live in places for specific reasons. We can't just make people move.
I mean, if someone said, hey, if you want to preserve your liberties, get the fuck out of Gulf Breeze, I'd be like, really? I don't want to do that. This is a place.
But let's say, for example, Texas seceded tomorrow and said that they were making that they were going to have a libertarian government. I would move there in a heartbeat. I'd leave here in an instant. If it came down to that, but actually, okay, I take that back because if they did that, I feel like other states might follow. So I would probably stick around for a little while.
But
long term, I'm going to go where my freedoms are.
I think that's where I'm going to go. That with conservatives in California, we are witnessing a mass exit. These people, despite everything, despite the fact that they've built their lives here, they are seeing that the way they want to live is no longer viable.
Yeah.
Because the people that are in power are fundamentally opposed, not just to their way of life, but to them.
Yeah.
These people, they do not, and this is what I'm kind of finding. The people in power, a lot of Democrats, they don't just hate conservative values, they hate the people. They despise the people because those people are a threat to their power. And secession is also a threat to because they are not going to have as much control as they had. Mm-hmm. Like imagine you're in charge of, maybe 1,000 people, and the second you get into that chair, 500 of them like, okay, fuck you, bye. Like, well, wait, where are you going? I like this seat. I like, they're not going to want that. A lot of them aren't going to want that. But I feel like a lot of collectivists would kind of be happy if they could kind of remove the individualists.
I'm gonna say right now, my ideal way for this to work out in my head is if we just had a libertarian place that we could go, and then a more collectivist place that we could go and see how it works out. And I've also thought about the idea of that. This isn't quite on the lines of secession, but I think it's kind of relevant, is libertarian versus authoritarian. And that if we had a libertarian United States and an authoritarian United States, or even if our I brought this up to Whit yesterday. Yeah. Instead of Republican Party and Democratic Party, what if we had authoritarian party and libertarian party?
I think there would be, because you're still representing very, very conflicting interests. And I don't see any feasible way.
I think that's the best way. I don't want to get too off track, but I think that would be better than what we have now. Because what we have right now is look at our conservative party, right? They want people to be able to have guns. Look at our libertarian, or look at our Democratic Party. They want people to be able to have abortions. Okay, so we don't have a place that we don't have a party that represents freedom and a party that represents government control. That's not really a thing, because the Conservative Party does agree with some things. I don't think they agree with as many things. I think the Democratic Party in general, of course, does support larger government more than Conservative Party.
Well, that would make sense because
the Conservative Party still supports things like making abortion illegal. And you see what I'm saying? I think if we could take each individual issue and argue it from a libertarian standpoint and an authoritarian standpoint and come together to decide what's best for the people, that would be ideal. But I really don't think that would work out in the long run, and that's why we may have to go to secession and look at ideas for if we're going to succeed, how are we going to structure this new country?
That's something, because we have a lot of like businesses and things like that. I don't think multinational corporations will really be affected, but now that they've kind of got two USAs to decide, what they can and can't do, that would be kind of tough. So actually, I do think though, if you have a libertarian United States, let's say authoritarians over here, censor, silence political dissidents, whatever. But the libertarian goes, if you want to have a service in our country, you're going to, be open as you can, But that makes
wait. What do you mean by that?
Basically, if you want to kind of have your service over in our, but that's the thing, is it's online. I'm sorry.
I just didn't understand what you said.
So basically, like social media, I guess. Let's look at that. Is now that they have two different USAs with two different ideological standpoints to kind of try and fight business with, which it's going to be. That's really the difficult thing, because you can't really say libertarian USA can't say all right, your policies here. Basically, they can't. They have to change if you want to have a service over here. But they'll just. But the people basically that they have to modify their platform to serve are still interacting with the people that they don't have to modify. So if you have people being banned over here, but if they live in this area, they're not being.
Yeah. Give a specific example. Of what. All right. About.
So
I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, I know it's hard for me to really articulate, but
no, and saying something like this, knowing that it's like on something like it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. I haven't really paid much attention to the camera, so I'm if whatever is being said is being said, and I'll come back and cringe at it later.
Yeah, of course.
But
a specific example, you said if a corporation is going to come to this new libertarian United States...
it's not specifically... It's specifically the social media atmosphere.
Okay.
Because how we're looking at it is if the internet really is a free... We're not going to get that. If we secede, all Silicon Valley is going to be still deep in authoritarian territory. So they are going to be able to censor and silence. Now, of course, the solution is that the people on the libertarian side are going to make their own platforms, which I could actually see happening, honestly.
That would be cool.
So I think I've just kind of resolved my little issue here, because if you're going to go on Twitter, they're based over here, they're going to censor people. Yeah. So I think I've resolved my own little question.
Yeah, because I think and part of the issue with all this is when you say secession, I feel like most people are going to think conservative versus Democrat secession of conservative states seceding or democratic states seceding, and that's why I wanted to talk about this whole philosophy of authoritarian libertarianism, collectivism, individualism, because maybe we don't have to divide ourselves by conservative and Democrat anymore. Maybe we could find a new way to distinguish ourselves, because I think our parties at this point have just become so jaded.
They don't want to change. They really don't. Like, if we could propose all this reform and they do what Nancy Pelosi did at the State of the Union address.
Right.
Tear that,
because this is their power. This is what they've worked for. They've worked for this power. But I think if it were going to happen, it would be conservative states, like you said, with like Florida and Texas. Yeah. I think if it were going to happen, it would be because these conservative states see what's happening in democratic states with things like homelessness and costs of living, things like this. Okay, we can talk ideals all we want, but if there's actually going to be secession, it's going to be the state. It's going to be if the policies that have happened in Los Angeles and New York start getting enacted on the whole country. At that point, I think
that's a breaking point.
That is a breaking point, and I think when that starts happening, that's when this conversation is going to be extremely important.
Yeah.
Because what else is there to do if the federal government is enacting things on these states? What do they have to do but leave if they don't agree?
Yeah. So this is really the ideal thing, I would think, that is not going to happen. That door has now been shut.
What door?
So if we look at the federal government, my ideal society, because I know I didn't really talk about this in a whole lot, delve into it, but let's say we have a government that literally only exists to protect our God-given rights from, each other or and basically an outside force. Mm-hmm. And so I do think borders along the line will have to be necessary there. But basically, if we wanted that to operate, I could definitely see the federal government being very lax, but allowing these specific cities to be very... It wouldn't really make sense, but if these cities want to be collectivists, they can, so long as the federal government isn't... It's really a states' rights thing, is what it is. It's kind of like allow the states specifically to enforce different laws.
What I love about states' rights is that states' rights gives people the option. So me as an individual, I can go to Florida, I can see what it's like here, I can go to California, see what it's like there, I can test out these different forms of government, because it's all under the federal government, but I can test out these different things, and then I can settle on what I like.
It's really, though, it's all the high concentration of populace that you will see the most collectivism. And so
that is fascinating. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I mean, these people are very... I think it's because... I think scarcity is a bigger problem there. This is just that I don't have any.
This
is completely theoretical right now. So anything I say,
we're thinking out loud.
Exactly. So what I think is going on with these cities is either there's been years of indoctrination. There's one theory, but I think a core principle is really scarcity is more severe there than in areas that have a fewer concentration of people. So, for instance, like electricity and water is being distributed to a more dense populace, and so they feel like there's going to be more sacrifices that have to be made to make sure needs are met. Whereas you go to a countryside, they're farmers doing whatever the fuck they want. Literally, they'll farm. That guy will farm. They can use whatever the hell they want because they've got all this land, they've got all this property, and it's just them. Because nobody wants to move down there. They're all in, more exciting places. And so these people are going to function better with less restrictions because there's no reason for them.
Right.
I feel like there's an incentive in higher populations to kind of have these more collectivist policies. But you still see a lot of people in these cities that do not feel this way, but are being subjugated to that.
Yeah.
And so what I would feel like... no solution is ironclad. Everything's going to have its problems.
Yeah.
There's
always going to be a dissenting voice.
The libertarian societies, even if we mention secession, they're going to be social conservatives that are going to be upset, but they're not going to move to the authoritarian side because the single authoritarian-ish thing that they want is not supported over there. All the other ones are. It's the inverse. So they're going to have to live with the fact that they're not going to get that perfect ideal. No one's can't satisfy everyone, but you can accommodate for a large amount of their needs, I think, based on where they align themselves. And I think the best way to do that would be on collectivism versus individualism. But what I wanted to see really is that
this is if we are actually gonna go through with a collectivism or a collectivist versus individualist society, where people are going to need to do a lot of reading. People are going to need to get into... People are going to need to get into these philosophical issues very deeply, because these are fundamental things. Yeah. Do I have a moral obligation to anything about you whatsoever?
Yeah.
These are issues that people have to answer, because a lot of people would say, yes, of course. Of course. If I'm in need, you are morally obligated to help me. But then a lot of other people would say, no. We exist completely separate in this whole space-time thing that we exist in.
Now, granted, I do want to clarify, just because, we don't feel that we are morally obligated does not mean that we believe it is not, immoral to, not help them out. Basically,
right.
It's not... So people kind of get this idea of individualism is like a selfishness. Mm-hmm. In some part, I can, agree. You're more you're basically your self-interest.
No, it is. I think individualism, it is selfishness.
Yes.
Like, almost by definition, that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But we need to take away the negative connotation from this word selfishness.
Yeah, exactly.
If we can talk about this reasonably.
Basically, it's really... Everyone's really going to be looking out for number one. There are going to be a few people, good people, that are pretty selfless. And that's not really a huge issue. That's not a problem at all. But I think there needs to be some distinction between saying, basically, I'm preserving my own self-interest here. That does not mean I am going to, be cutthroat about it. Mm-hmm. If you need help, I'm going to help you. Like, that's...
Yes.
But I don't
force me to help you.
Exactly. Don't make this don't make it law, basically. Don't force me to act against my own will. which is really what I feel like a lot of collectivists are kind of naive. This is coming from an individualist, where you think a lot of these collectivists are going to advocate for collectivist policies, which basically means, see, laws can't change people. Like, you cannot influence a culture with what's the right word? With government, with policy. You can't influence culture with policy, but culture can definitely influence it. Yes. Culture will always influence policy over the other way around.
Yes.
And I think that also kind of ties into entropy a little bit. These are people. This is nature. It's going to be chaotic, and it's going to the cards are going to fall on the table, and whatever that people have kind of been believe or been led to is going to influence whatever order they create. Order cannot override that nature.
Right.
Basically, even
people are complicated. It's hard to predict what people are going to feel about things.
And I feel like individualism would best accommodate for that. But this is kind of what I would imagine a better United States would look like. Is if you had let it be largely libertarian, right? Let it be individualist. Let them do their thing. Mm-hmm. But then in these cities,
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. But when you say a better United States, are you saying the United States as it is made better, or if we're talking about secession, the new United States? Which one are you referring to?
I think if we're going to kind of base governments on the popular belief in that specific region. So let's say that we have on the federal government...
So you're talking about if secession did happen?
A little... This is just theoretical. I'm not really... This is like my idea of...
Regardless of secession, this is an ideal society.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Let's get into that.
Let's say the federal government basically is hands off. Mm-hmm. They exist to, enforce basically laws that infringe... that protect our rights from being infringed upon. And protect from outside invaders. So let's say that's the bare minimum, but you can allow specific. See, this is really where the theoretical kind of it's not really going to hold up to scrutiny, but theoretically the more collectivist population centers could basically decide that they want to enforce collectivist policies. These cities could decide that they want to be a more authoritarian area.
So then if you want to live there, you can move there.
Yes, and then you can see those work out, but for the large part, it's those specific concentrations of power. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if you want to be a politician, you're going to move there and be a politics guy to kind of control the area. That's the thing, is it would kind of attract some bad people in government. But overall, I feel like that's still the best way. If you want all the collectivists to be satisfied while keeping a liberty, you just put them where they let them do what they are where they are.
Yeah, I think a less restrictive federal government is just. I feel like it just would work.
But here's the thing: is then what's to stop? Let's say other cities and areas from kind of starting to slowly, and it's basically start enforcing more restrictions. So like this traditional libertarian county or city decides, no, you know what? I think you should do this, or I think that this individual liberty here should be restricted.
Well, I guess that comes down to how much power are we going to give local governments as well? Are we going to let local governments go against this philosophy? If we've instilled this philosophy of libertarianism, would local governments even end up being like that?
That's really what it comes down to. Is I think you would have to in some way mandate specifically which areas can be, more collectivist. Which areas will have more power to influence.
How do you do that?
That's a good question. What I would assume
I don't know if that's possible.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, is like maybe give a list of like specific, all right, New York City, LA, and Chicago, you guys can do this, but only you.
They can do what? Because if we're gonna make this,
they can enforce collectivist policies.
Well, we need to have specifics, is what I mean. Like, what specific things are they allowed to do that other people aren't?
That's where we start to kind of. That's what I'm saying. Is this general idea would?
I don't think there's
yeah,
a
exactly.
Way to do that.
And so
I think if we're gonna have a libertarian society, we're gonna have a libertarian society.
So, but yeah, and all the collectivists though that are in these cities are going to start fighting, and then we'll go back to what we eventually have here. The collectivists are going to feel like, everyone's running amok, the streets are full of chaos, and everyone's being allowed to do what they want to do. This is terrible. I don't like this. These
that's
people.
That's where it comes into dividing into two.
Yeah.
Instead of having one United States that's libertarian, that's where we get to this idea of, okay, these people who are going to be uncomfortable with people having guns, these people who are going to be uncomfortable. I don't know though. I don't know if it would end up working out. If we had two United States, if the libertarian, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if the population, if there's a way to split the population into genuinely two, because the collectivist state. We have to define what is this collectivist state going to look like as opposed to our libertarian state. What is it going to look like?
Well, that's a good question.
Are we talking the collectivist state is going to have public health care, roads, libraries, firefighters, things like this, all funded by a state? It's going to have higher taxation. There's going to be laws that prohibit guns because maybe guns cause violence. There's going to be things, if the coronavirus comes down, there's going to be lockdowns. Whereas our libertarian state, kind of like none of that. Like people do their thing.
That's the thing is now we kind of come back to a problem we discussed earlier where we have these ideological packages. Mm-hmm. So basically it's either you've got all of this or you've got none of that. Now I think in practice you could have different policies among different areas, among different states. I think that's entirely plausible. Even in a libertarian society, it's possible to have, a restriction or two here or a regulation here. But the problem is, how do we keep that from, just turning into...
Just dominating.
Exactly.
How do we keep that dominating?
These are very kind of hard questions to answer.
These are hard questions. I think if we paint it like this, if we paint it like I just painted it, where we have one society in which these things are publicly funded, in which people are taxed, and their tax dollars go towards these things, healthcare, roads, these ideas. We have politicians in place who look at what needs to be done to raise the average maybe standard of living or happiness. And that takes place in our collectivist society, and then in our libertarian society, the politicians are simply there to make sure people stay free. I think that could work. I think that actually could end up working, because there's a lot of people who would go to the collectivist place, especially people who I guess a good way to look at this was we have to think people who are currently in financial hardships, maybe they move to the collectivist area, and people who are more financially independent, they're going to go to the libertarian area because they don't want to get taxed and everything. So would we end up with would we just end up with a slum of a collectivist society, do you think?
That's what I'm thinking is like, a really good way to turn people libertarian is to give them exactly what they want in terms of collectivism. So if you have a collectivist state, I think people who are traditionally view themselves as collectivists living under a collectivist state will eventually turn individualistic. And I think it could possibly happen the other way around. I think, people could start to see...
Maybe that's our answer. Separate into collectivist and individualist. Let all these people go to this collectivist society and see how it turns out until they come running back to us.
This is, yeah.
And then we say, okay, you see what we mean? Okay, now we're going to... I don't know. These are hard things. These are very difficult questions to answer.
Here's kind of what we start getting to the specifics, basically, is people, are going to...
I think we've been at the specifics.
Yeah, a little bit, but in terms of applicability, two very large groups that are going to be very disappointed with this outcome. Libertarian left and authoritarian right.
Libertarian left. Why is that?
I think the libertarian left is going to want some of these social...
What do libertarian left people want? Last time I took the political compass test, I was libertarian left, but I was barely left.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing I've had is for a while now, is I don't really see the libertarian left as a viable ideology. That's going to be, and this is just, basic level, a layman's perspective. It's like you've got basically, if you're all the way over here, you're anarcho-communist. You have total state domination of your economy, but
How does you said anarcho-communist?
Anarcho-communist.
How is that possible? I don't understand.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is you have entirely a state-dominated.
Do people actually feel this way?
Yeah, they're what do we Antifa? Those are all ANCOMs. Yeah, or sock dems, or not.
I'm just having a hard time imagining what that even means.
What is
the ideal world?
Well, let's take the political compass, at face value. Basically, these people want complete government control of economic issues, but they want to be completely hands off on social issues. So things like abortion or transgenderisms or even gun rights are completely off the hands of the federal government, but wealth doesn't exist. Basically, I think it's a kind of classless society that they talk about, where it would be really hard to pull off, honestly.
Okay, now it's fairly obvious.
Well, yeah, but I
don't think it would work, but
I think really it would have to be in like little communes, and that's what the name is. The communists. It's communes. They have to be in these little communities, basically. That kind of don't really have a structure. They all just kind of participate in caring for each other's needs.
Water everywhere. Nice.
So I could see that happening. I could also see that turning out poorly. Actually, I'm not entirely
okay. So let's get back to you said that libertarian lefts are going to be disappointed and
authoritarian rights are going to be very disappointed. Their huge thing is looking at things like drag queens, sex work, and some go far as things like gay marriages and sex change, and they see that as degeneracy. They see that as a decaying society, and whether or not you agree with the specifics of that, they want the law to come into place to restrict those things in order to protect the society. And so when you're going to see a libertarian society, you're not going to see the restrictions on those things that they want. So they're going to be disappointed. And then you have... See, I think the authoritarian right is a more viable ideology than the economic left. Or the economic domination. Yeah, the libertarian left, basically.
Yeah, libertarian left, that's an interesting thing to split social issues and economics. I don't see why we have to separate those things. Let people do with their money what they're going to do with their money if you're going to let them do what exactly. They want with every other area of their life.
There's actually a very specific... There's a very specific example of, I think, an anarcho-communist society. I could be wrong on this, but from what I understand, I watched a documentary on Jim Jones. I don't know if you know who that is, but basically this guy, this was in the middle of the civil rights movement, whatever. He kind of gathered a group of people, like a giant, like maybe 300, 900. I think it's like three. It was either 300 or 900. The numbers are those are really, really not narrowing it down. Right. But it was anywhere from 300 to 900 people that got on planes and flew over to this community. It was literally a commune. There was no... And Jim Jones expressed it as like he was a socialist. He was a communist. He was very like this. There is no money here. We're all in this together. There's no racism. There's no none of that. Which racism. No, that's good. No racism. Right. Cool. Because in the '60s there were a lot of people. There was one guy specifically whose son was his adopted son was black, and he was like, I can't. I'll leave him here. Well, I want to leave, but I don't know if they'll have a future in a United States that is dominated by racial politics. And that ended up being a very bad decision for him, because what ended up happening is this anarcho-communist society, from what I understand, what I think it was, it fell apart. It got more authoritarian. This guy was starting to become like a control freak. And what ended up happening is he the town was called Jonestown. That's what it was.
Jonestown. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a documentary on it?
There's a documentary. Okay. I had to watch it for my communication class.
I need to watch that because I saw the one Wild Wild Country.
Gotcha.
If you haven't seen that, watch Wild Wild Country. That one's crazy. That's where this Indian guru came over and took over this town. But yeah, I've heard about Jonestown.
So Jonestown, basically, what happened was this guy, they had, they built everything themselves. They went and shopped, whatever they needed. They had all these resources. They were basically, literally, it was kind of, very collectivist, very, selfless, according to them. And what ended up happening is he just started deteriorating. Now, an argument can be made that it was his mental health that really started to take him over, but I think that kind of thing is going to be inevitable. There was a specific couple concert goers. I don't remember the specifics of this, but there was a community somewhere that got trapped there because of the initial lockdowns, and they decided they were going to be an anarcho-communist society, and it fell apart. But back to Jones. Now, that's such a very non-specific thing. So take whatever that was with just you can throw it.
Yeah, like if you're a listener, go research that.
Yeah, exactly.
Do
not take what I just said for any kind of fact. But the Jonestown massacre, even this is I'm not really. I watched the documentary, so I'm a little well versed on what happened. But the very specifics, there could be things that I don't know about it. But what I understand is that he basically it got to the point where he was kind of afraid of people wanted to leave. People were not satisfied with the place, so a lot of them wanted to leave. There were guards that kept them in. They would not allow them to leave, and that's a very real thing that's reflected in look at countries like North Korea.
That's crazy.
Emigration is illegal. You cannot escape the country, and so
that,
these people,
in my opinion. If there is a single thing that's like the biggest crime against another human being, it is trapping them in a place and saying you're not allowed to leave.
Yeah.
That is what could be worse than that.
Yeah. So basically there were armed guards there that ended up happening was, one day when a senator, they came down, he's like, all right, I'm going to go, because these people haven't had any contact. They were basically indoctrinated to believe that, whatever was behind there is behind them. This place is better. The family was going to hold them down. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that was really weird. I'm usually better articulated than when I just... Sorry.
You're good.
Keep going. I'm starting to stumble over my words a little. But basically what happened was the senator, he flew down there with some family members of the people that went down there because they were really concerned. They hadn't heard anything from them. And, I think there was a few phone calls that could be made, but actually, no, it was the one guy who wanted to talk to his daughter, but his wife had taken her down there, and she wouldn't let him speak to her. She would say, oh, she's very happy here. She doesn't want you in her life, basically. That really hits here, knowing, something that's what my dude, my dad's and things like that.
Right.
I'm not to that degree. That's awful. And I'm still blessed to have the parents I do.
Right.
But I can kind of see where that mentality would have come from.
Right.
Where one parent is like to the kid basically, either he doesn't want to see you, and then to that parent, the kid doesn't want to see you, just to have that.
It's
control
messed
of
up.
The kid. Yeah.
It's messed up.
But basically, so what ended up happening is the senator flew down here with a bunch of the family members, and people wanted to get GTFO. They wanted out. They went to them in private. Basically, they couldn't even say it because.
So the senators went down to Jonestown.
Yes, and Jim Jones would be like, all right, the senator's coming. You tell them that you're happy here, that you don't want to leave, and basically it's like, you're happy here, right? And he goes individually. He's like, yeah, I'm happy here, and so the guy had to slip a note to the to the senator and say, hey, get me out of here. There were a couple people. I can't remember the specifics. Very small number of people managed to basically get his detention. So they went around, and basically he's like, all right, I'm going to pull these people out. And Jim Jones was like, all right. He was very, outwardly he was like, okay, because he didn't want anybody out. Because if they basically got word of what was happening there, they would come bust his ass. He did not want what was going on there to fall apart, and he was so obsessed with preserving this that he wouldn't allow anyone to leave. He wouldn't allow anyone to come in, and so these people, they left. He told his guards. He sent a truck basically after the people that were leaving on these planes, and they went over there and they opened fire on the people that were. Yes, the senator was shot.
I gotta watch this doc.
The senator was shot and killed. A couple of the people, basically one of the guys who he told to leave with them, he had a gun, and basically he went to try and kill everyone on the plane, crash it basically on its way back. And so these people, a lot of them were shot and killed. There were survivors, obviously, well, not obviously, it's very lucky that they even survived, because they went around, these guards would literally go and find these people that they shot and wounded, and would shoot them in the head to make sure they weren't breathing. And while that was happening, Jim Jones, basically, he got these people together, right? And he started making the whole Kool-Aid thing.
Yeah.
He basically mixed, like, these very, very toxic... This is a painful death, too. And he wasn't just making them drink, he was injecting children with it. They were about... It was 300
He was injecting children.
900 people in the camp, 300 were children. And basically, these guards... It wasn't just a suicide, it was a massacre. These guards forced these people to basically inject. They would force the drinks down. There's a lot of people did go down willingly, the zealots. The guy whose wife wouldn't let him basically see his daughter, she had a house, there was like a checkpoint, and she was living there with her daughter and a couple other kids. She stabbed all 3 of them to death, and then stabbed herself.
That's heavy, yeah.
Yeah, it was really...
That's heavy.
You know, and it amazes me that more people don't know about this.
Yeah, anyone listening, go watch the doc.
Yes,
I'm gonna do it.
It's the Jonestown Massacre, I think, on YouTube. Yeah. You'll might have to link that, because I'm not... It was a while ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole documentary on it. Really shocking stuff, but that's really the biggest indicator to me. It's like, I don't see anarcho-communism as a viable... Even with a small community, it does tend to fall apart. You would have to have a bare minimum of people.
Okay.
Because on paper, you know, it sounds like a good idea.
So now what's... So to just frame what's going on right now, so we've established that theoretically we're going to have a collectivist and individualist United States. We said that anarcho-communist and the libertarian left,
intermediate
the libertarian left are going to be disappointed. So now we've disavowed anarcho-communists. Now, you said earlier that you think libertarian left isn't a viable ideology, and I'm interested.
Not necessarily libertarian left. I think when you get the more down here it goes, the less viable it is. This is generally
because earlier I kind of indicated that I agree, but I don't know. I thought about it a little bit. Like, I've been kind of like processing a little bit, and I feel like libertarian left could work.
No. This is where I kind of need to draw a distinction here. I think that when you go down here, this area right here, the anarcho-commune, no, absolutely not. But something like a libertarian society with maybe a welfare state or something like that.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Just could anarcho-communism theoretically work with the right leaders? Because Jim Jones seems like he just wasn't a good leader. It seems like with the right leadership, if people were allowed to leave, that possibly it could work. And I don't want to do a deep dive on anarcho-communism, but I see the issues with it. But I think theoretically,
this is generally it's the whole good king argument, where it's like, well, you see, if I would rule, this is how things would go differently, and you can't always guarantee, because even the people that enter these giant positions of power, with good intentions, will eventually find themselves starting to be influenced. And it takes a really strong will to
and this is something that I've never really thought about this before, so I don't really have, I don't have too much to say on it. It's interesting to hear about it.
It's a matter of how you deal with the people that no longer want to participate in that society. If we have a seceded America, technically they can move over here, but if they have more interests that are, basically, if they have more interests that are aligning with here than here, and they don't want to move, then they're going to they're obviously going to be unsatisfied. But I think it really comes down to what happens when people stop wanting to put in the legwork to support this commune, to support this kind of collectivist. And what do you do with
capitalism? Is that you work, and then you have the freedom not to work because you've made money and you can finance it.
Yeah, it's really about it's what you kind of bring to the table. It's whatever you, and this is, I hear a lot about how capitalism is like some kind of evil because of corporations and things like that. Capitalism and corporations,
they don't.
They don't. There's a very specific ideology, and that's kind of.
Let's get into capitalism and corporations, but I do want to hear when you say that bottom left gets less viable. I want to hear the reasons for that. I'm really interested to hear.
So basically, with
and explain to me what specifically you're disagreeing with. Like, what is that ideal society, and what's wrong with it?
Right. So when we in a capitalist society, obviously, the whole reason it works is because people have incentive to, work, to do these things. They have incentive to be breadwinners. With a communist society, communist society, basically what happens is when you don't have rewards, when you don't have specific incentives to work, you have consequences for not working. Motivation needs to be there. Now, if you have people that generally agree with the commune as a whole, I think that would be more viable, but that requires to get only people who are willing to participate. And then that means, to what end, basically, are they going to keep participating? Now, how much legwork are they willing to put in for the same return? It can get very...
And remain happy.
Exactly, and remain happy.
People have to remain happy.
Yeah. And so I feel like when you have, you do the same job, you don't get paid for it, but you get kind of a general list of things that you've provided for. The wealth is distributed, as they say. And it doesn't matter what job you do. It's all the same. You are participating in society. Here's your basic needs that are being met. Cool.
Yeah. We're not gonna stop you from doing other things. Like, if you want to have guns, you can have them. Correct? Like in this theoretical society.
In an anarcho-communist society.
We're talking about bottom left. Libertarian left.
Okay, so libertarian left. Yeah. So generally, social issues are pretty much off the table. You can do whatever the fuck you want in that regard. It's specifically but even still, like let's say it is socially controlled. Let's say it isn't. I think controlling a kind of workflow to make sure needs are met is always going to be better done naturally. It's always going to be better done with motivation to participate in the society rather than a doctrine or for the greater good. The greater good, as much as people want to think, it does not work as well as people think it does.
I don't know how we even define something like a greater good.
Let's say
the only way to define, if you're going to define the greater good as being the well-being of most people, that could be it. But are the people happy?
Yeah.
Are the people healthy? Are they alive? Are they getting their needs? But do they feel fulfilled with their lives?
Yeah. When I say greater good, it's actually interesting that you brought up there's multiple definitions, because our greater good is people being happy, people being free, liberty. That is a greater good, because these people, are basically, we see that as the best possible thing for these people, is to allow them to choose what is best for them. And when you go and say, all right, this is what's best for you, when you have someone you have to have somebody that arbitrates what needs need to be met, how much people are allowed to basically have, or, what they're kind of restricted to. And really, that's it. When there's no motivation to kind of do anything, there's no motivation to get better. You can't. There's no escalation. There's no de-escalation. It's just, when I say that, I mean there's no way to rise up. There's no way to make it better for yourself. There's ways to escape. There's in an anarcho-communist society, there would be, I guess, sex work, I suppose. Well, not even sex work. It would just be sex, porn. I don't know.
Wait, you say in an anarcho?
In an anarcho-communist society, which I think the social control doesn't really, it's not as important in this specific regard. And when we talk about authoritarian right, where we can kind of, we'll have a little more. It's like
you can. I feel like in a society like that, you can make your life better by doing things like eating well and working out and making friends. Yeah. But there's a peak.
Yeah, there is.
There's a peak, because ideally I would like to be able to have enough money to travel the world and go do cool stuff and experience cool things. If you're living in a society like that, you can be happy up to a certain point.
And then it's deemed unnecessary.
Yes.
And the issue that people have, and this is something, it's a zero sum. People believe that if you have something, somebody else doesn't. That's not really, that's really why people believe this, the more in socialist policies.
There are plenty of people in this world who are fine living very simple lives, not doing a lot of things, not experiencing a ton of things. There are people who are genuinely happy if they can find something and do it for the rest of their life. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people. Don't put me in an anarcho-capitalist or anarcho-communist society, because I'm the kind of person where every few months my ideologies on the world change. I have different things I want to go do. I'm all over the place. I like experience. I just want to experience this world as much as I can.
We could literally look at this podcast and be like, oh, what a bunch of juveniles, like a month down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
But that kid's voice is cracky.
Yeah. There's just so many things to do in this world, and I think any society that inhibits people from doing those things is fundamentally doing something wrong.
Yes, and this to them it's morally justified. If you are basically it's being self-indulgent to them. If you want a better life higher than this peak of happiness that they've set, and this is the thing, is this is different from escapism. Mm-hmm. Escapism, and there's a huge difference between quality of life and escapism. Quality of life.
Explain escapism to me.
So escapism,
by your definition,
when you have no social control, escapism is almost unlimited. And this is what I was talking about with, you can find it in sex, you can find it in porn, because sex work doesn't exist. Prostitutes aren't going to be paid to have sex with people, because that requires goods and services to be exchanged for monetary value.
So the government would have control over that if it did take place.
Yes. Pretty much. So that brothels are kind of weird in an anarcho-communist society, because it's like these people aren't doing it to get paid, or maybe they enjoy it. I don't know. There could be some people that literally just have casual sex.
That'd be interesting to see. I'd like to see an experiment of an anarcho-capitalist society that grew big enough that something like a brothel was in demand, to see if it would even take place. I don't know.
Well, I think anarcho-capitalist society. There's just it's almost pure anarchy. That's the thing about anarcho-capitalism.
I meant anarcho-communist.
Oh, okay.
I messed up my words.
So anarcho-communist, it would really be kind of interesting to see how. Because, but anyway, I think these people would start to find their enjoyment in more, casual sex or masturbation, some form of stimulation, some form of entertainment in media, which would obviously be kind of. I think it would be pretty regulated to, kind of tell you, hey, support the collective. I think there's a lot, because even now there's a lot of propaganda, and that you could say that it's because opposition is there that the propaganda is necessary to these people, because they're trying to convince you of something.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting to see entertainment, how that works in an anarcho-communist society. But ultimately, it would just be what about budgets and things like that? How are they going to get the resources to do it? Entertainment would be hard in an anarcho-communist society. But
would it?
Well, I mean, if you have to.
What I'm thinking is if. Okay, an anarcho.
Well, let's say entertainment like companies, like you have budgets and you have a specific software resources that you need to make entertainment, especially the stuff that we like today. And so, in an anarcho-communist society, if it's just open, it's out there, and to have this much is basically an excess. How would that work? And that's the thing, is that's escapism. That's what people would need. If they can't improve their quality of life, they need to escape this. They need something to entertain themselves, basically. And so I think without, like movies or video games, which would be really hard to do in this society, I think they would turn to sex. I think that's the most readily available form of emotional stimulation, because it requires your hand and a hard-on. Yeah. Or wet tubes.
Right. Yeah. People need entertainment. People need to get something out of life.
Well, it's not just that. Yeah, exactly. People need to get something out of life. And when you are only have your needs being met, there's nothing to strive for. If you think that's where it's going to be, that's the end-all be-all, what are you doing besides existing? You need to be entertained somehow, and entertainment is going to be limited.
I guess, or you build talents. Do you think it could be that people just end up getting really good at stuff? Because what else is there to do than practice? Find something you enjoy doing and practice. I don't know.
I suppose.
I feel like.
But then, where are you applying those talents? What use would they have?
I guess that depends on what the talent is.
Nah,
if it's something related to a job, then maybe it's like, okay, cool. Now you can be the best at your job.
But then what?
Yeah, then you're the best at your job. People, if you're someone who's not, I don't know. Satisfaction is a hard thing to measure.
And it varies so hard, much. Yes. Is that having this society would meet the needs of very, very few people, and I think in the short term, people would love it. Yeah. I think, but I think they would also like it because, and I think it seems ideal because we have the products of a society they don't like. If you know what I mean. Basically, we have, resources and things like that were made for some form of motivation, either for a patent to make money or something like that. And so you see a lot from these people as like, well, I don't have to like a society to participate in it, basically. Like, this is what's here, I'm going to do it. It's like, that's all well and good. And no doubt they would probably take the things that they already have and kind of import them onto this anarcho-communist society. They would, but it's funny because that can almost never actually grow naturally. It would have to be something that because I suppose it could. And the theoreticals we were talking about with the stimulation, it would be interesting to see them bring products of our world kind of into that society. What? Well, like video games, like TV.
Like bring TV.
But then how long would that stimulate them for? If they can't, it would be hard to create new media out of these things.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing, because then you see what people really want to, what do people enjoy doing in life if money isn't the goal. It's almost like this is born out of some opposition to what we have in place. I think that's really where it grows. I don't know if these people actually think of this as a society they want, other than thinking of the one we have now as a society they don't want, because they use terms like wage slaves, for instance, because they think that let's get into corporations and capitalism a bit, like you touched on earlier.
So what's interesting to me is having social restrictions in a free market society. I feel like I really feel like the only thing that would, if the economy, I feel like that's the one thing you really can't mess with, I guess.
What are you? I'm confused.
Well, so basically, in an anarcho-communist society, we kind of
I didn't realize
let's go back to there really quick, and I think it's more just in terms of because I don't think an authoritarian communist society would work very well. It would come more naturally, but it wouldn't. The longevity of it is not.
Authoritarian communists. Look at China.
Look at China. Look at
what's
USSR, Venezuela. Yeah. I could go on. There's a lot of authoritarian communists, a lot of tanky states.
I don't want to spend too much time on anarcho-communism.
Yeah.
So let's talk capitalism, corporations. Earlier you said capitalism doesn't imply corporations.
It doesn't. Literally, capitalism is just literally money can be exchanged for goods and services. That's the core.
But does that not? I feel like if you look at places in which capitalism has been put in place, like the United States, you see that if money can be exchanged for things, right? People are naturally going to acquire large sums of wealth. They're going to recruit people because people need help, and now you have a corporation. Because as you get more money, all you need to do is bring more people, and then you can keep making even more money off of them.
About corporations, is I feel like a lot of them. I feel like in some way you've got to blame some form of government intervention. There's a lot of bailouts happening, for these giant corporations. I actually disagree. Now that I think about it, with tax cuts for corporations, I think that was not a good idea. It should have gone to small businesses. It should have gone to
I think corporate bailouts are one of the biggest things the United States has messed up on.
That should not. I feel like if there were no corporate bailouts, we would not see the kind of corporate.
Isn't the entire point of capitalism that if your business is going to fail,
it's going to fail?
Then it's going to fail. If we let failing businesses survive, then we've betrayed the idea of capitalism.
Yes.
And you can't look at anything that happens from that point forward as a product of capitalism, because now we've betrayed the entire idea.
Yeah, pretty much.
We've propped up a corporation that didn't need to stand.
We can really go into specifics here. Let's look at, for instance, recently, if a government didn't get involved, yes, a corporation, it's got all the money in the world, but I feel like, if people are generally going to be more wealthy in a more capitalist society, let's say government intervention, they deem, this is the thing about government, there's a lot of things that they deem as utilities at this point.
Yeah.
This is actually the one biggest thing I have against a completely capitalist society is there's things like I'm sure roads could be worked out, but it's things like what is it specifically? Lighthouses. That's a really weird one, isn't it? Lighthouses.
When's the last time you heard the word lighthouse?
Yeah, right. There was a specific example that I had in mind. Power companies. A free market. We do not have the resources to make a competitive power company. Or basically have power companies competing. The logistics of that is kind of hard. Like
You don't think
one
a
case,
pure capitalist society they would work it out?
you know what, they might.
Don't think the
I think
corporations
they
would-
might. I think that is something I've kind of molded over a little bit. But as we stand, it's hard for us to kind of, you know, if we let's look at Gulf Power, right?
Mm-hmm.
If another power company were to come out, first off, that requires a large amount of resources to be allocated for that. They have to generate it, and then they have to distribute it, and they distribute it by having these power lines, and they would have to set up new power lines. And if you wanted to switch from Gulf Power to that company, you'd have to change the power lines going into solar powers. Having solar panels on your house, an alternative to that, I feel like that's what would work.
Yeah, because it's like if Gulf Power is here and it works, why do we need another power company? There's no reason for there to even be a new one.
Exactly. But again, I think the biggest, it's not exactly another power company that would work as a free market alternative. It would be other power options.
Exactly.
It would be solar energy. It'd be having a windmill above your house, I suppose. Florida would make that Florida would make that kind of hard, but
Yeah.
you know, but solar panels I think are a decent.
I think where solar panel technology is right now, not even.
No, that's what I was
not
going
even
to
close.
get to.
Maybe in the future if we make some way better solar panels, but right now it's not there.
Yeah.
Things like water power and wind power. And this is something that we could fact check. We could fact check that.
No,
of
again,
course,
because
so.
I say this solar energy and things like that. I just say it as theoretical because I know there's a lot of people that are like, no, they're like that right now. Hell no.
Yeah.
So to see kind of alternatives pop up, not necessarily alternatives in the same fashion as what we traditionally. That's kind of what it is. It's not just. It's different niches. It's almost like if you want to compete, it's not just playing their game. It's like you have a completely different service that serves the same function
Capitalism.
that you can provide.
That's why that's kind of the idea behind capitalism and why it works is that things keep
fluid.
getting better because you as an individual aren't going to get wealthy unless you can make society better theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically.
And of course, there's going to be loopholes. People are going to find ways to exploit others. That's going to happen. That's human nature. You're not going to get rid of that.
But it's such a fluid system because there aren't so many rigid rules in place. It's just this determines this. It's almost like let human behavior kind of just take the reins.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that would progress toward tyranny.
I've thought about that a lot. Is that in a pure capitalistic society, if one individual makes enough money and there's nothing stopping them, eventually they're just going to start making laws.
But I think the thing that usually lets them make as much money as they do, like for instance like Jeff Bezos, I really think it comes down to government intervention. I think it comes down to favoring and lobbying and these sorts of things, which how do we get rid of lobbying? Like that's I think if a government literally exists solely for the protection of its people and does not do any other policies, and then you have people of course that are going to be talking about environmental regulations and making sure they don't exploit the resources, which here's my counter argument to that. Why in the world would they try to squander if they are really concerned about preserving the longevity of their company, which most companies are generally trying not to die?
Yeah.
I feel like they are not going to exploit. They're not going to try to like strip an entire land of its resources because eventually, if it runs out, if they can't replenish it, they're done. And then the counter argument, I suppose, to that would be, well, it's not going to happen in their lifetime, which is a good, I think.
And I think another thing is that in a capitalistic society, it's like if theoretically it started moving towards tyranny, someone else would rise up and people would stop supporting that company.
That's exactly what I think. If there's an alternative, you have the option to take it. With the most in government intervention, what happens is, especially if we're looking at what's happening right now, when you see these lockdowns and how it's hurting small business, and then compound that with a minimum wage raise in Florida, I mean, there's no way small businesses are going to be able to compete against corporations that can withstand that stuff. They can hire more people.
Right.
That's really the biggest thing. People argue against the minimum wage for the wrong reasons. They say things like, the minimum wage, it's going to basically drive prices up because if everyone's making this much money, then they're going to raise, which, if the minimum wage is raised like here, it's not enough to really substantially affect prices, I don't think. Unless you're making like $200 and that's going to
because what I'm thinking is, for example, they're talking about raising it to $15 an hour, and let's take a lot of small businesses around here pay people $9 an hour.
Yeah.
That is huge. You are increasing people's pay by 2/3.
Yeah.
If prices don't go up from that, I'm going to be confused.
Well, yeah, I think that is something, but I think the bigger arguments are that it's going to hire less people, and you could say, well, they can afford that. Of course, corporations can, but you're trying to sink the ship to kill the captain here. Right. Whatever you try to do to corporations by inflicting these regulations, you are going to destroy every last small business before you affect the first mega corporation. I hope someone doesn't mishear that.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
But no, before you hit the first mega corporation, you're going to sink every single one of these small businesses in the area. There's no way policy to combat these corporations is going to work out.
Now, can we look at places that have enacted minimum wages and see if all their small businesses shut down? Like higher minimum wages?
Well, I think it's not just the minimum wage that will do. I think it'll hurt the small businesses. I don't think... It's really... you would only kill them, I think, if you kept going forward with these things. But it'll hurt them. Yeah, it'll make these corporations better than these small businesses.
Yeah,
it will lessen the alternatives, which will further reinforce corporatism.
Yeah.
In an attempt to stop it, ironically.
Yeah, minimum wage is a difficult one because it's like theoretically, if there were no minimum wage, people just wouldn't work unless you paid them a wage that they were happy with getting. Yeah. It's like if you don't pay people enough, you're not going to get workers. So why is a minimum wage even necessary, theoretically? I think at this point, since it's been established in the United States, I don't think it would be feasible to really do away with it. Yeah, necessarily. I feel and the thing is, we also have to look at that corporations use international labor. That is corporations take advantage of free labor overseas,
which is why I think the government should have a little more power when it comes to trade. I think that's I do kind of agree with tariffs, and there are going to be some people that don't. But if you have incentive to keep a corporation here, if you are going to basically export labor, like Ford moving its factories to another country, and they have to pay more, basically, if you make the cost of exporting those more than the benefits of those, I feel like that's incentive to keep their labor here. Right. Which is really that's also is this human rights issue, which then we have to go on like, do we as a libertarian individualist nation do something about humanitarian crises like in Hong Kong?
Foreign policy is a whole nother
that is a whole other ball game. Which there I think is negotiable regardless of what society you have. I feel like foreign policy is really kind of almost independent of how a society governs its own people.
What if our libertarian society, our government doesn't do anything about it, but we let private corporations start little private SEAL teams and go overseas and do foreign affairs?
See, that's another thing is I wonder how we would keep up defense, because obviously if it was going to be government funded, that means it's going to be taxed.
There has to be tax.
So would there be
private militias?
That's what I was thinking is have private militias and things like that. Which an incentive protect a monetary incentive to protect your country sounds like but I mean, in practice, I don't think these people are going to go, oh, your credit card was declined, time to open fire on our own civilians. That's a little. That's a little bit of a straw man, but if we're simplifying it, I don't think that.
Yeah, that's interesting. If we were to split the United States, what would our libertarian society's military look like? That's interesting. And how would we fund it?
That's the thing is I almost wonder if I think you can kind of accept to taxes specifically for the common defense.
If you can tell me where my taxes are going and they're going to places that I'm okay with, tax me. Yeah. And I think in our libertarian society that would be necessary.
Honestly,
if we're going to start from scratch, that would almost be necessary.
If you think about it, the government in its own way would kind of act like a service in exchange for monetary. Because if you think about it, I think that's really the biggest thing. The only difference between the government-funded military and a private military is the government's making you pay for it.
Yeah. So maybe but here's a private military could just could say, I don't know how you would get money out of the public.
Is, I don't know. Yeah, that's what I don't know how you would kind of make your money. Is like, would you charge for like a defense? How would you kind of measure that? Okay, these are things I feel like we could explore. Let's look at this
differently. What if maybe in our libertarian society, if you're a good person and you make a lot of money, I'm talking like a lot of money, you say, hey, I'm going to hire a bunch of people and I'm going to start a military. So the military itself isn't bringing in any money, but you've made money from other means You've started a business. You've made a bunch of money. Because I'm thinking, if I'm a person living in this libertarian society that has no government, or that has no military, it has no government defense set up, I start a corporation, I make a ton of money, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to hire a bunch of people and I'm going to start a military for our country.
Yeah, I feel
Could
like
that be
super
possible?
wealthy. Yeah, I feel like super wealthy people are actually kind of good.
Because I'm saying, bro, if I were super wealthy, there's a lot of stuff I'd be doing for people like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like money like completely eradicates benevolence in people. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, just sure you're going to have the occasional hoarder, but you know, generally, if you have someone who's upstanding and makes their money, now you could argue that capitalism generally doesn't favor people who are more selfless,
Right.
which you'd be right, but you know.
But I think, if our society was set up right, people would understand services and products, and they would understand value. So if you're someone who genuinely has something that can improve the world, people will be okay paying money for that, and you will become rich.
Or why don't we...
People just need to work hard and get good at things and have something to contribute, so people want to give you money. People aren't going to want to give you money if you don't have anything to contribute, if they don't have a reason to give you money.
I have a theory. This is completely, devoid of any actual thought, put into this before, like right now.
Right.
But let's say you have an arms company, right, who makes money off of arming people, and then will also pay people to protect the military, or basically to act as a military.
Wait, hold on. You might be onto something.
I mean,
So you give people guns, so people have guns in their private lives, and then whenever it's time to step up and to defend the country, hey, come on.
Yeah, basically, we'll
it.
pay you. Yeah, exactly, we'll pay you because the defense is in the common interest of everybody. If we're looking at this from a capitalist standpoint, let's just say you're looking out for number one. If an invading force comes into your country, you're not just going to say, okay, I'm not really going to do anything about it. It's not my problem, because it kind of is. If an invading force it's a threat to your business.
Yeah,
so you're going to pay people to protect that.
Right. I think if you're talking about defending from an attack, it's very easy to get people on board with that.
Yeah.
Now, what if we're talking about something like Hong Kong? I don't see it happening.
Human rights. Yeah, that is something that you really. And this could
that's a whole nother debate in general. Should we be going out of our way to do something about things like this? And I think if we're talking about China, yes. Not because I don't think we need to do it from a moral standpoint of people somewhere else are getting hurt. I'm going to go and stop this from happening. I think an argument could be made for that, but the argument I'm going to make is that China right now is becoming such a superpower in the world that we're going to have to step up and do something about it.
Yeah,
I heard
right. Protecting our common interest would so
if we don't go over there and do something about them, that China is going to keep growing until we have to do something about it.
Exactly.
Until they're coming straight for us.
So I think a proactive private military would actually see it in their best interest to stop China from doing that. And I feel like in terms of that, the government might actually. Now the thing is, I think we'd have to give a government a budget to operate. To some capacity, obviously, you're going to have to need resources.
Well, yeah, because if there's going to be a single person working in government, for them to live, they need money.
So I do feel like that in some ways taxation is going to be necessary.
I think if we can outline specifically, I'm saying from the point that money leaves my bank account, where it goes to this account, then this account, then this account, then this percentage of it goes to this politician, this percentage of it goes here, this percentage of it goes here, and if I say, hey, I don't want my percentage of the money going here, I think in an idea, maybe that could be set up where they say, okay,
you got to spend it on something.
Your money's going to 5 places, and I say, hey, take my money out of this. I don't want my money going to this. And they say, okay, we're going to take that money and we're going to put it over here.
Yeah, could maybe hold it to a vote or something like that if you deem the program unnecessary.
Possibly, yeah.
That would be really interesting. I had something too. In terms of...
Sounds like Steve's home.
Yeah. In terms of taxation, I think...
He's probably like, where's the couch and the table?
What was I saying? Damn. Kind of like completely lost the train of thought.
Yeah, we were talking about
taxation.
If you could vote on where your taxes went.
Yeah, I feel like, because to some degree, obviously, the government's going to need taxes to function. I can say taxation is theft all I want, but the truth is, if I'm getting services, because it's pretty much it's pretty much like a forced good and service.
I think taxes without allowing people to choose where they go, I think that's theft.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair argument, as opposed to taxes. If I get to choose where my money's going, I say, okay, you want to put my money towards a military that's going to defend me and is going to go solve human rights issues in Hong Kong. Sure, take 5% of my money and put it there. I'm okay with that.
I think what needs to be important too is something that really lost me with social SOCDEMs, basically how they want to kind of up
that's social democrats.
Social Democrats. I think honestly, a percentage-based tax is fine. Because it's literally, if you have a set monetary value...
That's a perfect way to do it.
Exactly, because if you have a set monetary value, some people are going to find it negligible, some people are going to find it devastating. Do it tax-based and it doesn't matter, you're all being affected the same. I don't understand why people are trying to up the percentages when you make more money. Like that, just
I understand the idea. I understand the idea behind it. It's like you make more money. You don't need that much money. If you make over X amount of money, bro, you're good. Like if you have a $2 million house, you got 5 cars. Why the hell do you need that extra? Why the hell do you need that extra 10%? I see that argument, but then I also see the argument of you're going to scare all the rich people out of this country, and people aren't going to want to make money, and then people are going to.
Yeah. I find a moral actually qualm with that too. Whereas it's almost like the idea of you don't need this, so you shouldn't have it. You don't need this extra money, so give it to me.
Yeah,
that's kind of so. I completely
convince me why I should give it to you instead. Like it. Don't take it away from me. Convince me why I should give it to you.
I think if richer people want to opt in for paying for, I mean, hell, they could probably fund entire fucking military organizations on their own if it gets to that point. But I feel like it would kind of reach some form of cap, like a soft cap, not a hard cap, not mandated. But I feel like there's only so far a company can go before it collapses under its own weight, provided it's not bailed out by a government. That's a theory that probably, again, that's just me thinking about it.
So I want to start to kind of wrap up this political discussion.
Yeah.
So let's to cap it all off. You're king of the United States.
Yeah.
Effective immediately. What do you do?
Absolve myself. I mean, remove myself from power.
You're not allowed. What do you do? How do you fix the United States right now?
How do I fix the United States?
And obviously, these are complex issues, and there's going to be a lot of contingencies. But what do you do if you could do it right now?
All right. Well, I mean, I feel like the having the burden. I get what you mean. This is theoretical.
This is a hard question.
Yeah,
I don't expect your answer to be great, as mine would not be great. But
yeah, it's okay. So let's start by I'd probably tell any kind of lobbying corporation. This is the thing about lobbying. It's really hard to define what good lobbying is and what bad lobbying is, and how do you take away, because it's really a kind of a moral thing.
I say get rid of lobbying. I don't think it should be a thing. I don't think corporations should be able to buy political interest.
Let's say there is a special interest group out there. It's a non-monetary, like the NRA, something like I'm going to, although it is kind of a form of bribery, I think. But it's basically saying, hey, here's a law that we want. Can you pass it? I feel like to some degree, but that's just.
But money gets involved. As soon as money gets in, if money is allowed to be involved, then we have a problem.
I feel like government should not be allowed to participate in monetary dealings with its own society, its own governed people. Now, private deals, whatever, between individuals as long as...
Okay, so what do you do? What do you do?
Okay, so lobbying's out, first off. Take out pretty much a good shit ton of some of the regulations. Something that people would hate me for, I know, right off the bat. Medicare and Medicaid.
Really?
Yes, and there's a good reason for that.
Next time I get you on this, the next time what I want to do is, because this for people listening, we literally decided to do this today, so that's why a lot of this stuff like secession, we're spitting off the top, and next time I want to pick a few topics and say okay, we're going to talk about healthcare, so we can both research it and get some ideas together, because I think a deep healthcare discussion needs to be had.
Yeah, but for starters, I think a lot of the Green New Deal policies, and there you can actually make an argument that history books will not tell you. They could go to any historian, they'll be like, no, just straight up, no.
No to what?
Well,
I lost you there.
Basically, any history teacher will try not to, or will tell you opposite of the fact that the Great New Deal, New Deal did not actually help. And there's again, this is something you would have to completely research for yourself. Please don't take my word for this.
No,
I'm just
we didn't prepare for this at all. Literally, this was like off the cuff today. So anything we've said, fact check it.
Please
and
do.
I think it is absurd that we have to say this, and I think that is a huge thing and a problem in our society is that someone would listen to anything that we say right now and take it as word without fact checking it.
Even
and if you get nothing
yeah.
else out of this discussion. Check your research.
Another thing is, just because someone doesn't provide or just because someone provides resources doesn't mean you should just take their word for it. Like, literally, if they're giving you sources, check the sources. Don't just say, "Oh, look, he provided sources." Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's something I also say, and that's something I fall guilty of.
That's something. If I were king of the United States, I would genuinely put together some sort of program to instill these ideas in people. It would basically propaganda, but like. Propaganda to teach people to be self-sufficient and to be smart. But keep going.
Okay, that's I don't know if I would call that.
I just don't know what else to describe.
Like a self-sufficient. I don't know. That's interesting. But I think so. Let's go. So Medicare and Medicaid. Basically, an argument can be made that the Great New Deal actually worsened the Great Depression.
Really?
That we see it went down like this, and we start to see an iota.
What went down?
The economy, basically, the monetary value, people's jobs, unemployment skyrocketed. But you start to see a point in that where it starts to recover. You're coming out of that, and then the Great New Deal hits, and all these social programs where people think they're getting safety nets and things like that, and then it goes even further.
Really,
and that happened early 1930s, and really even it happened. It took until after. World War II. A lot of people even think World War II solved it because we got factory jobs. It's not entirely true because it still took some time.
History is by far my worst subject, so a lot of this I barely know anything about.
I'm kind of talking out my ass just a little bit. But after World War II, it took some time for the economy to recover after that.
So Green New Deal.
Well, not
this is what you were discussing.
So any of the New Deal stuff, all those social programs would have to go. Medicare, is it not Medicare? Social Security does absolutely nothing for us. We're not. The idea was to basically put in a savings account. It was literally a savings account. They forced you to make a savings account. That's
how about again? It feels like I feel like I make the same argument with everything. How about instead of forcing people to make a savings account, we teach people how to save for retirement?
Well, here's the thing: is Social Security basically what happened was the government. They said, okay, well, we're gonna take some money, put it into account, get it later. That's how you're gonna live, because the age, what is it? We stopped dying at 65.
Yeah.
So
needs
then
to be
all
accounted
these
for.
pension and programs and things like that. Yeah. So now we're living past 100.
Okay, so you do away with.
So I do away with Social Security on the basis that it's no longer paying for ourselves when you get older, and even if it was, it's a forced savings account. Right. It was paying even when it was conceived. People already started paying, and they were paying for the people that were old and needed help then. And so we were perpetually paying for the generation before us, which is a problem.
Yes, and I think if you're gonna do away with Social Security, people who have paid money towards Social Security, like people who
reimburse it.
Do away with it for people who are coming up in our economy, but people who have put something into it, they still need to get that out.
Yeah, that's the thing is I guess there would have to be a cutoff so people stop paying for it, but then that means because it's literally it's kind of created almost a system where it's almost impossible to get rid of. This is another thing where government can't even solve a problem it's created itself. Yeah. Permanent solutions to temporary problems are a huge issue. To ourselves.
So how do you? So you do away with. So let's assume you figure out logistically how to get rid of Social Security. Okay.
Yeah, that would be really hard. That's almost a political suicide for anybody who would try. Even Trump, I thought would be the guy to do it. He was like, "This candidate wants to take away your Medicare and Medicaid." I'm like, wait. You're against that, Trump?
Yeah.
Come on. But basically, so all those social programs would have to go, but I think I would be in favor of some sort of, because if you're starving, I feel like basic needs do need to be met on some level, but it's got to be enough to incentivize going further. Having homeless shelters, having soup kitchens and things like that, I think that's fine. And a lot of people just open that stuff up because their hearts. Yes. So if we, if
surprise, there are good people in the
world. Yeah, exactly.
Surprise.
People kind of treat people like evil people that need to that can be just solved by laws that force.
I think cynicism is a cause for a lot of ideologies and a lot of politics.
It's strange, isn't it, that cynicism and idealism seem to kind of... It seems like they wouldn't mix. But you have people that are both. You have ideological... what's the right word? Naivety that is promoted by cynicism.
That's a really great way to put that.
Isn't it?
A really good way to put that. It's like, because a lot of people just look at the world very negatively. They think there's all these things wrong that need to be fixed, but they think that somehow it's like...
My Lord and Savior Chuck Schumer will come in down from the golden stage.
Pushing until we can get to some ideal point in which this isn't going to happen, but you've already said that these are issues that can't go away.
Yeah,
what do you?
So
what's
obviously
next?
poverty can't be eliminated, but you can make sure that you can make sure it's not lethal.
Yes.
You can't. People are going to be poor. That's
yeah, and I think if you're going to have a program like that, people have to be able to show that they're actively trying to pull themselves out of these situations, be it if they have skills trying to find a job where they can utilize those skills, or be it if you're someone who uses, or maybe you could implement something where people who are benefiting from those programs, if someone's in a position where they absolutely need the government support to stay alive, I think that it's also in the government's best interest to maybe help put those people in programs to get them trained in certain areas so they can get a job to no longer need this, so that people don't end up living off of this permanently.
I almost wonder if some form, because you remember Mr. Olson, our science teacher? He was he was against public education. He's like, hopefully in 20 years public schools will go away, which the social factor of it is a little disappointing. I made a lot of friends in public school.
Well, I don't think public school means no
school.
No,
you're right. Obviously, you're.
You would make friends.
No,
this
is what I'm saying. That I still support the elimination of kind of a general public education, because a lot of it is teaching you theoretical maths that you will probably not get a career in.
See, I think general public education is a great thing. I just think it's done horribly. I think we're teaching people the wrong things.
The society that you're trying to press me to create here, I think that. Public education could work in the sense that you teach sustainability. You tell them how to take care of yourself. You basically tell them how to participate in the society, and then you make colleges, you make career schools for these places that have these incentives, because university is already privately funded, and you can say what you want about, by the way, something else I do, scholarships that incentivizes high tuition. It does. I mean, if people... Because here's the thing. This is what people always seem to neglect, is that you think that you're forced to go to these things. You think that they can charge you as high as you want, and you're going to have to pay it, and that some people that aren't going to go there are going to starve and die because they can't get
I don't remember the reason. I heard this on a podcast, and I will, if I can find it, I'll link it in the description of this, because this was a very, very interesting thing to hear, was that government subsidies are directly responsible for high tuitions. And if the government had never stepped in, colleges wouldn't be like this, and I may be wording that wrong, and I may have misunderstood that.
I think
but it was something like that, where government intervention in colleges was the reason that they ended up getting jacked.
Because it's literally, it's like, oh, cool. Well, the government's just going to pay for it, and people say, well, I want free college or whatever and things like that. I want the government. Well, the government already does fund it, because they basically give you the money to go there.
I would love this. What I think would be outstanding. I don't know how we would put this in place, but if there was a way to, I act like this is some crazy thing. I think this could be done. If taxes went towards colleges and went towards people's educations, so that college was free. I'm saying this like it's some crazy idea. Bernie proposed colleges being free. I think that could really be done if we could cut college tuitions down. If we could get colleges to, I think colleges waste money in a lot of areas. A lot of events that colleges put on and whatnot. I don't want to say that events are a waste. People need to have fun, but I think a lot of college spending could be reallocated, possibly.
Yeah.
If we could find a way to make college actually free using taxes, if we could make education cheaper and then put tax money towards it, imagine how much better society would be if every person had a college degree, if they had gone to a good public school, that they had a good base education, and then every single person could pick something they want to study and do it for free, how much better our society would be.
Okay, well, if we look at this, obviously it's a logistical nightmare, but what I was going to say about colleges is, if you're already paying, let's say it's tax funded, you're still forcing them, and some people might not, if there's a trade school or something like that, now if you're going to say career education is free and everything like that, I don't see, because the colleges offer a lot of programs that aren't necessary. And if you want to, and they're not just for people who want a job. Well, I mean, if you look at literary tools, writing, things like that, obviously you can use that for a career. But you just terms of like, I don't know. I guess most classes can technically be used as a career, but there are some classes that are just kind of fluff, memology, gender studies.
I think no matter what you're studying, having gen ed classes, like if you have, you pick 10 classes that you just want to study, that's where a lot of those fluff classes come in, because it's like, what if I just want to learn it? Just for the sake of learning it?
This is the thing.
Or if I want to use something I learned in that to have a unique perspective on the rest of my career, possibly.
So what I'm thinking along those lines is I don't see tax funded colleges being able to do all that. What I do see is if you have the sustainability option, right, you remove the scholarships, college tuitions are definitely going to go down. They can't afford to, and obviously this is going to reduce certain, flashy aspects of the college. They're not going to have the money to pay for some of the more quality of life things, but they're not going to if they're completely government funded. There's going to be budgets, and there's going to be restrictions. So if it would have to be the college, they would have to have something that other colleges didn't. Maybe if it's not budget, it's something else. It's maybe offering skill set, expertise in certain careers. So then you would go to those. No, scholarships means that they're probably not going to be able to do sky high tuition, and so they're going to be like, okay, we'll make it reasonable for you to enter. And so people are going to do that. And while they're there, you take a certain amount of classes per tuition, and those classes can also allow for, if the college is well funded, more classes to better yourself as a person instead of just allowing yourself to be necessary for society to function.
Yeah, I think a lot of the bettering yourself as a person classes, that's what we need to be teaching people in our general education, in our public schools.
Or making premium subscriptions.
Oh no. I think our basic education, our elementary, middle, high school, they should be exposing us to these things like sciences and math. They should be letting us dip our toes in everything. Yeah. But I think what they really need to be teaching us is how to be a functioning person in society, how to be a open-minded person, how to think about things critically. That's what we need to think.
So
what were the two things? I think I said before. I'd still agree. I think philosophy and psychology are two things that people need to be learning in schools because they teach you how to think. Philosophy teaches you how to think about any issue in the entire world critically, and psychology teaches you how to deal with people. If those aren't the two most important things to understand in this world, how to critically think and how to deal with people, I don't know what else is, because with those two skills, you can go out and learn anything.
Yeah,
because you understand people, you understand how to learn people, you understand how to analyze people and how to get the most out of your experiences watching those who understand things you're trying to learn, and you know how to critically think, so you know how to piece things together faster than others. That's why I think those two things really help people learn. That's one of the main reasons that I wanted to study philosophy, was not only do I love it, I love philosophy, but once you know how to think critically, anything else you want to learn in this world is just easier because you know how to connect dots faster than anyone else.
Yeah, I almost wonder if some of those skills could be self-taught. Like, to what extent does it better yourself more than I could better myself on my own?
Rephrase that. I didn't quite follow.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. So let's say, philosophy kind of teaches you how to think, which, if it's going to be included in general education, this kind of implies that most people don't, which I would tend to agree.
Like a critical I don't know if you, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, I was really quick. If you have a chance to take a critical thinking class, take it, bro. It just helps you, because there's so many times in the world that I've been like, oh, that's a critical thinking fallacy right there. This person's argument just fell apart, and most people wouldn't realize that their argument fell apart. But keep going.
I suppose you train people to start, hone in their pattern recognition. It's a literal defining trait as human beings.
And it teaches you how to be open-minded and how not to fall into set ideologies. But okay. So we're fixing society.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So some general education. So I would say let's take out some of the more theoretical stuff, because you should be able to learn that, like chemistry. What the hell did I need that for?
Yeah,
I think oxygen is made of O2. Cool.
Right. I think it's cool, like I said, to be able to dip your toes in that. But there's no reason why you should have to take an entire semester worth of it if you know.
Yeah, I feel like there's no reason for me to take chemistry, biology. I think physics though. I think that could be an interesting class. Torn down to its basic. Let's exclude quantum physics. Let's exclude quantum physics. That's one weird tongue twister. Let's exclude quantum physics.
Yeah.
And let's take out some of the more theoretical sciences.
Because I think exposing people to something like quantum physics makes them realize how crazy this universe we live in actually is. I think that's important.
I think the curriculum should be flexible.
People's minds should be blown.
Oh, I agree.
In quantum physics, if that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know.
I'm not going to say that these things should be completely off limits. So obviously, curriculum should be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
So if a science teacher like Mr. Olson wants to, he wants to talk about theoretical physics and be like, all right, first rule of understanding this, you don't understand it.
Yeah.
Holy
physics. Mr. Olson's physics class is. That's one of the top classes that I remember from school. Because that class just opens your mind so much to the possibilities of what's capable in this world we live in. Like the time being relative, and when really understanding the fact that when you're moving fast, you actually just age slower than someone who's standing still. That is the kind of thing we need people to be thinking about stuff like that.
And so honestly, it's like I get the general concepts. There's the specifics that always I couldn't do in that.
Things
class,
like buoyancy, bro. That jump blew my mind. That jump blew my mind.
The battleship
not in a good way either. I didn't get it.
the kinematics and the battleship games were just not for me.
Battleship was fun.
Yeah, it wasn't as fun for me. I don't know why. I couldn't pay attention in class. And what was the weird gang sign that he did? I remember
I don't remember that. No.
So it was like the pattern of like electrons around a current, and like when he was like doing all the basically showing. Well, he was demonstrating it with gang signs, and there was one where basically you wrap your 3 fingers around your pointer finger. What? Yeah, it was impossible. But it was kind of funny to see some humor go into a lot of these things, and I kind of liked it when he got philosophical.
Yeah.
What really blew my mind was that he was Christian. I thought that was really interesting.
That's great. It's great.
I think it's a little eye-opener there.
Religious people getting exposed to science.
Science was literally created by Christianity.
Perfect. Because if there are numbers to show something, then unless you can prove that those numbers are false, we have to take that as being true.
Yeah, science can only prove things false as the definition. Most people don't realize that.
So let's get back to Fiction Society. I want to wrap this up pretty shortly.
A little segue though, just really quick with the Christmas. You've seen the Santa Denier memes?
The what?
The Santa Denier memes.
Oh no, I haven't seen that. I haven't kept up with memes in a while. Honestly.
Fuck Santa! Science will bring me presents.
Like what?
This is it's just coming out of Christmas, so that was on my mind.
Right.
But so yeah.
Police. What do you do with police?
Ooh. That is interesting. Well, obviously, to some degree, you're going to have, in order to maintain a free society, you're going to... And that sounds really kind of oxymoronic, doesn't it? You need police to maintain a free society.
I think, while you're thinking, I'll propose what I would do to police personally is
Go ahead,
more training.
Obviously.
Okay, police need way more training. They need to learn how to actually deal with human beings. Police need to be taking as much psychology courses as anyone else on this planet, unless we're able to have. And this was an interesting idea that I heard was you have police that deal with crimes, but then for things like suicides and things that you need mental health professionals, have mental health professionals. But for the police themselves, police need to be trained. They need to have experience. Like, police need to be going into the field having already been around other experienced police officers who have done the job for a while. Police need a lot of therapy. Police need to have probably weekly therapy sessions because they have the most difficult...
Yeah, oh my God, the shit they must go through.
They have one of the most difficult jobs in this entire planet. They have to... When they pull someone over, it's like we don't think about this stuff often, but their entire job is ruining people's days. They make people see a cop pull them over and they're like, and the person's mood is ruined. Like, that's your job, is to almost ruin people's moods, and that shouldn't. I don't think that should be the case. We need to teach police officers how to do their jobs better, and we also need to teach people to be less upset about that kind of stuff.
See, I feel like
I don't know what to do about that.
We were kind of on track for that until Molotovs started to be thrown.
Yeah.
It spiked. Popularity spiked. Police reform was on the list, and then they shot themselves in the foot. You need to burn down a Starbucks for police reform.
I'm saying go to the precinct, bro.
And the people did. That's exactly the source of the problem. Like that
guy said, bro.
Ripper was,
that guy said, he spit facts.
You spit facts, dude.
He spit facts. But yeah, that's what I would do with the police. Is I would say they need more training first and foremost. And I think if police have proper training, a lot of the other issues might start to resolve themselves.
You know who could have actually been on board with this? But it just really, really disappoints me. But the whole, the thin blue line flag, right? The Blue Lives Matter people seem to think that's in some support of a statism or like a police state, when it's literally like, hey, cops have hard jobs, you know? And I feel like the conservatives that didn't understand that aspect of it, they were because I saw this whole thing about them waving it with a Gadsden flag, and people like, that's literally the exact. I was like, not necessarily. You can support people without the institutions,
right?
And you can also say that I suppose that people who refuse to support, or basically people who refuse to or uphold laws, basically that are unjust. And people believe laws are unjust right now, so they don't like the police for doing that. Which it's funny enough, because you saw a lot of conservatives who didn't really understand the nuances of that go full ACAB after the Capitol Hill thing.
Right.
Like if I were still in that weird tribalist mentality, I would have been like, hey, ANCOMs, I hate the government too now. Let's go fucking overthrow. Right. You literally have a bunch of anarchists who have conflicting economic ideologies, but even further, the tribalism still would hate each other.
Right.
But let's go back to what we were talking about.
Okay,
police.
So I think screening. We need to have very strict requirements if you're going to be a police officer in the first place.
Yeah. So, shoot, I'm sorry, I kind of went off track too.
No, you're good.
But yeah. So police.
And if you don't want to change the police, that's cool too.
Well, no, I definitely. Oh my god, I do want to change the police. Holy shit, some of them are dicks. That's the thing about that is you're going to have I don't know if there's really any solution. The police aren't just going to be all fine and dandy, because positions of power, positions of authority are going to attract people who crave authority. Yeah. I think any ROTC dropout is going to want to be a police officer.
Yeah, that's why I really think training and really having strict requirements for who can be police officers would fix all the other issues. If only people who are genuinely fit for the job of police officer get that job, and if they're treated correctly and trained properly, I don't think anything else needs to be done.
Yeah, I feel that, yeah. I wonder how you would, let's see. That would have to be funded, too. So I wonder where the resources would go to that. Obviously, I don't know if private police would even be on the... you'd have to have some constitution, I guess, to operate by as a police officer, I suppose. Some set of laws, basically, you can't breach. But I think as long as you're, all you have it. You just protect people's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, because I think our police system as it is right now really isn't that far off from being where it needs to be. We just have people who are assholes become police officers, and then they don't get the proper training, and... yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I feel like they're all right. Let's see what else we got. Education, police, military, cutting pretty much all any government really.
Foreign policy.
Ooh, there we go. I think that would really. I am not, I'm not the expert.
Yeah, and you can, and if you're king, you can also just say, I'm gonna let someone else handle that.
Yeah, I suppose I'd appoint someone. I'd have to read up on Trump's Art of the Deal.
That's the first thing I'm doing when I'm king of the world. I'm ordering a copy of Art of the Deal.
I mean, shit. That's the one thing. A lot of people would have to give the guy. I don't understand. Like, if you say he's malevolent and also I don't understand. You can't say he's like a little baby Trump who can't do anything, and also say he's the incarnation of Hitler. Choose one.
And then he's gonna be the downfall of it.
Yeah, literally, like, if you hate his policies or whatever, you can't just also say, oh, by the way, he likes to smear his dick in puppies or something. And
like what? Where do you
I don't
get
know,
that
or say he's like bad at trade or things like that, because he's not. I don't care if you hate him. I don't even. really, like if I had to take back, I'd probably find a lot of his policies in contrast with what I like.
Right.
But definitely foreign policy. You gotta admit he was pretty good at that.
He did well.
He did well.
And I hated it at first because when he was first in office, I was my views were very different back then, and I was like, why is Trump like I was almost globalist back then. I wanted everyone to come together, and I didn't think we should be having tariffs and stuff like that. But then it's like the more I've learned, it's like, okay, actually, places like China exist, and we don't need to be bending over backwards.
Well, that's the thing is you saw he was very aggressive in dealing with them, which is something you really need. We saw this. If you want historical backing for that, look at World War II. I don't want to say that. Actually, I feel more comfortable saying that China's the next Hitler than anybody else in the world. Yeah. If you just keep appeasing them, which
China is actively committing moral atrocities on par with the Holocaust right now. I really believe that.
We literally elected our next. Who was the British Prime Minister before Churchill? Do you remember?
No.
History
is not my thing.
I think it was like No, it doesn't sound right. Charlemagne. What the hell is that? I saw that word.
Charlemagne the God.
I don't know. Either way, it was some British leader before Winston Churchill basically had the policy of appeasement, where like you let him kind of take here and he'll be satisfied. I feel like we've literally.
What do you mean by that?
Basically, Hitler kept like taking. He was imperialist. A lot of people confuse nationalism and imperialism.
Explain the difference.
Nationalism, it's tribalism, but it's to an extent just being prideful in your country, kind of being a more. Actually, I'd say it's a little bit opposite. You're being a kind of an isolationist, not really wanting to get involved. Your country comes first.
I don't think. Sorry, explain imperialism, because
imperialism is you're taking over. You're setting up colonies. You're basically getting involved in everybody's. You're being the world police almost, but more than that, you're taking
that
over.
Makes sense.
So Hitler,
when I think about nationalism, I don't think nationalism necessarily implies any kind of foreign policy. I think nationalism, all that nationalism means is, it's a sentiment of being like, hell yeah, I'm from America. Yeah, America.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like sports team pride, whatever.
Wait, hold on. How is that different from patriotism?
It's not really. I don't think the two are. I don't know why people seem to differentiate the two, other than patriotism.
I used to know the difference between the two, but I forgot.
I feel like patriotism is very like American based. I don't know.
Well, I think patriotism is more like America, and then nationalism is more like America's better than everyone else. Maybe that's it.
Maybe it's the specific, because I think patriotism though. I don't know. That is a good point. I wonder.
I'm gonna Google it real quick. I'm gonna get a quick dictionary definition while we're here.
I don't know if I trust Google definitions at this point though. Let's see. So Hitler was basically an imperialist.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is just according to Google. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time. You can look at Dexter or whatever later. Nationalism is identification with one's own nation and support for its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. And then
I wouldn't have included in patriotism. I would have just put
the quality of being patriotic. Wow. Thanks, Google.
Fucking beautiful.
Thanks, Google.
Jesus
Devotion
Christ.
to and vigorous support for one's country. Okay, so it's pretty much what.
So basically, I think nationalism is more of like patriotism as a policy.
Mm-hmm. Also, we've been going for a long time.
Yeah, we have. Holy crap! I've lost track of time.
Yeah.
But the good news is I'm not falling asleep anymore. I was on my way over here. I had just woken up.
Yeah.
I was, So
Wait, you never even drank that Red Bull?
I did drink I drank a Red Bull on my way.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not gonna have two, and I'm gonna have a heart attack.
Okay, let's.
So Hitler was an imperialist.
Yes, that's
more
what we're on.
And so in that regard, appeasement will not work. And I don't understand, even if you hate Trump. I suppose if you believe everything the media is saying about him, how he's this racist, he's literally going to, end your life because he hates you and wants to, I hear invalidate my existence a lot, but that's mainly from the transgender community. I don't really know.
Okay. I could see an argument being made for that. I could see it. I don't want to get into that right now, but I can see it.
Yeah. That's a discussion I'm having with someone else on the side right now. But basically, even if you believe all these things about him, which I suppose that might actually influence you, but I don't. I mean, that would be a matter of, before I convince you that you fucked up, I gotta convince you that you didn't really vote in your self-interest over here. That this guy wasn't. It's hard because we elected. I mean, I say we elected as if
As if we voted. We were what, 16 at the time? 15?
Well, no. Even I'm talking about the 2020 elections. Because you can argue whether or not they were secure, but we have China's bottom boy in office. There is, if people view China as a threat to the world, Biden's election, especially.
This is scary. Like, we're living in scary times.
If you look at that specific regard, I completely understand why people would have fucking stormed the Capitol. That is literally. That's an existential threat right there. We elected China's
bro, me and
boy.
Whit have talked about this. Me and Whit want to do a whole podcast where we just talk about China and why people should be afraid of it.
I would so fucking get on that podcast.
Yeah, facts, bro. And I want to do a bunch of research and present facts. And again, that one child policy documentary, that highlights a lot of it. So if you get the chance, definitely if you end up coming for that. But we'll talk about that later.
So yeah, foreign policy. Definitely, I appreciate how we've been handling China so far. In the future, oh, Jesus Christ.
We have to get stricter. We have to, but it's not going to happen in the next 4 years.
Fucking happen.
It could get crazy, bro. I don't like to sound... I don't like to be extreme or to exaggerate, but like... China could try to take over the world at some point, and we have to accept that.
In a vacuum on China's foreign policy, right? Foreign policy as it relates to China. You fucked yourself in the ass if you voted for Biden on that one.
Yeah, you did.
You literally just shoved a tiny Chinese cog straight up your ass.
Bro.
I'm sorry, I know you were trying to keep it PG. And
I'm not. What I said was that I'm fairly PG, but say what you want. Say what you want.
I'm sorry, guys.
It goes against everything I stand for me to bring you on my show and for me to tell you how to behave and how to act or what to say. That goes against everything I stand for in this world. Yeah. You come on my show, be yourself, okay? That was a funny
very
joke.
Vulgar. If you meet me in real life, very, very vulgar. I promise I'm not a mean person, but it's like the language I use. It sounds like I come from some backwater. I know. I think words mean nothing to me.
Listen, I really think. As a culture, we need to abandon the idea of curse words. That is the stupidest construct
I have been
ever.
the biggest advocate.
Yeah.
I tell my parents all the time, like, why are you swearing? I'm like, this is such an arbitrary thing to say that we've decided that I say fuck you. Go,
like, what? Bro, just don't make that reaction, and it's no longer a bad word.
That's something that you're gonna have a hard time convincing people of the other side of the coin. The more like fuck, shit, ass, damn, whatever. But then you go to the more racially charged ones, and then
that's different. That's a different discussion. Because there's actual connotation.
But I can still carry the same philosophy.
I do too. Yeah, I think.
But there is more leeway for you to. There's more understanding for you to.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna say any like racially divisive words, but I think as a society.
If it pisses you off, I will.
Possibly. I think if we got to the point that we're getting into the weeds here. This is risky. Yeah. But let's say, for example, there came a time in which black people were okay with white people saying the N-word. At that point, the N-word would no longer be a bad word, right?
See, that's the thing is like right? You talk. I give this to the LGBT community. They have completely and totally taken queer out of the hands of anybody who was using it to slash them. That is the best and most perfect example I can think of. You literally going back, calling them the queers and shit. They took that. Bro, they fucking took that.
Black people did it too. And I think it's hilarious.
No.
They did.
At the N-word?
Yeah,
no. Because if you're still getting it, the thing is, if you go up to a gay person and say, hey, you're a queer, and they'll just be like, okay. You cannot get that same reaction.
Okay, that's different. But I think what I'm saying is, I think it is so badass that black people call themselves that after we used it against them for so long. I think it's badass.
It's pretty diminished by the fact that they're like, oh, but white people can't use it. Like, I feel like if you were gonna make that like as a point to show that they're like
well, I think it is badass because we used that word against them.
Well, yes,
and now they say, "Hey, we can use it and you can't." They flipped it on us.
That is
flipped it on us.
Fine. If they flip it on, yeah.
Okay, that's
I still don't think that's the most respectable option. I think with the LGBTQ with queer,
that's good too.
I love that. I think that's better because it's. And I have this kind of idea that I really want to promote where it's like stop. don't have to tear other people down to build yourself up.
Right,
kind of thing.
right.
And so what I feel like a lot of the racial justice is like you're just turning the tables. You know,
That's true. You're right.
It's like if you say, you know, okay, well, you've been calling me this for centuries. Like, I'm going to use the word, and now you can't, or I'm going to beat you to death.
Right.
It's like that's just you.
I think it's badass what they did. Is it in the best interest of everyone? Maybe not. Eventually, maybe we can get to the place that everyone can say the word. I'd rather not say it. Like I don't.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's perfect. It's like almost. What's funny is I guarantee more people say it because they know they can't.
You think?
Yeah, I think the term would be archaic. It would be like fucking shifferobe. You know what a shifferobe is?
No, I don't.
Exactly.
Okay, there we go. All right, let's get off of this. So foreign policy. We went over. Is there anything else that you want to do if you're king of the United States? Is there anything else?
Shit, I don't know. It's like I wouldn't really have a whole lot of demands other than removing pretty much most of the policies in place. So many, really, like, and I think though something else is we really, and this isn't going to be a technical reform, but we kind of have to start gearing our culture to understand what the fuck the justice system is actually for. You see so many lawyers in technicality, and they're playing it like it's fucking Ace Attorney. You know, and it's like it's not a game to win. These are people that are either innocent or guilty, and you know, at its core, it is literally presenting evidence for both sides. Obviously, you're going to want a good defense, but there's this idea. It's like lawyers kind of get paid on whether or not they win a case, which I don't think is fair. I think you have to be paid to try it. Do they get paid more if they win? I feel like for civil cases they can.
I don't know. I'm sure that's something we could figure out in a quick Google.
I don't know. I think I think that might be something worth googling. But in general, I feel like if we stop, which they're lawyers. I mean, that's a lot of them are just awful people.
Yeah.
But if they stop thinking about it like winning and think about it like this isn't a game. It's not a fucking game.
Yeah.
Stop
human beings.
Stop picking jurors that you think will just rule in your favor because of things. Stop trying to game the system and just.
So what do you do instead? Because I don't know how to solve this.
I don't know. I have no clue.
I have no idea how it could be done differently.
I think the best way to do it is just try to. A lot of these issues, I think it's how we think. I think if you can kind of teach people, which that's also hard to do.
What if instead of having a lawyer for the defense and a lawyer for the prosecutor, what if you had like 3 lawyers that got together and analyzed all the evidence and then came forward and presented a case for both sides?
Well, I think what would work for that is you already have you don't need 3. You have the judge as the arbiter, but
I'm just thinking for the sake of sake of being thorough, just have more people.
Okay. Well, here's actually I think a 3-lawyer system would work. What you do is you take 2 lawyers. They literally find as much evidence as they can, but the thing is, they would have to any evidence they find to the contrary, they would have to turn it over.
Yeah.
They would, because the withholding evidence is a huge fucking problem. O.J. Simpson. But basically, you know, you gotta, you know, the honesty, basically. A lot of integrity that you're not going to find in many lawyers, if any. I mean, there's some, can't just say all lawyers are shitbags.
Right, well, I think if we reform this, maybe the lawyers themselves will start to change too.
All lawyers are shitbags. But no, I think if you have one that's dedicated to compiling evidence against, one that's dedicated to compiling evidence for, but they swap, and then you have a 3rd lawyer that goes and presents the case, so you don't have these 2 basically arguing with each other. You have this one lawyer that shows the side, says, this is what my client, or this is what my investigator here found, this is what my investigator here found, and then based on that, and I think a lot of it isn't just evidence, like obviously for guilty convictions and things like that, but I feel like moral dilemmas are often in court too, whether, especially in civil cases with lawsuits and things like that, you want to talk about damages, it would really, I think there is no actual rigid system that you can define with that. And I think there's a kind of discussion I've had with myself is if we base, you know, the court system like on a pure like moral, you know, standpoint, if we had no guidelines, it was literally just hearing like in civil cases, because obviously criminal cases where it's the state versus the trial, and you have to figure out if he's innocent or guilty. That's one thing, but also intent and motive, not just committing the crime. Why did he do it? To what extent? Did he do anything? Obviously, there are things that need to go in there. I guess that's more for sentencing, but I really feel like that should be kind of left up to a judge's personal morals, I guess. Which is it's a little dangerous. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and we could even have like a lawyer that presents the defense, a lawyer that presents the prosecutor, a third lawyer that comes and analyzes both of them and presents a neutral case where he says this.
Well, that's what I was talking about.
And then,
but the thing is about the judge deciding on his morals is that's kind of plays into the moral tyranny that we don't like a little bit.
It's hard.
I think there's some distinctions you can make there, but overall,
justice is hard.
Yeah,
that is a difficult thing. At the end of the day, sometimes it's not going to work. Like, unless we're omnipotent, sometimes all the facts aren't going to get out.
You can't have a flawless justice.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's about it.
Okay.
I mean, we could probably go on a little bit more, but
no, I think that's good. So
those are my basics.
You're king of the world. That's how we fix it. Bet.
Let's see. And then I'd absolve myself from power.
Dang, it's 9:00. We've been going for what? 2 hours, something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
2-3 hours? Bet, bro. Dab me up on
Hell
that.
yeah.
For sure. Wrap it up. Thanks for listening to the podcast. This was the first one. A little
sweet. I feel honored.
No, it's cool, bro. This is sweet. I love this. I love that we'll also get better at it. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
And I want to be able to prepare ideas,
I completely forgot I was on camera. I've probably been picking my nose and doing things like that. I see the microphone.
Scratching your butt.
Yeah, you just start sticking fucking fingers up your asshole.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look back in the footage and be like, oh my god.
No, you did great. This is great. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on for sure.
Yeah, this was pretty fun.
It only goes up from here. No
idea how long. I fucking sit at night and just fucking talk to myself about this. Not talk to myself.
Bro, you'll be a regular guest for real. What we'll do is let's sit down and maybe a week in advance say, hey, next Friday we're gonna talk about X thing. Prepare info and let's do it.
I'm gonna see if I can run away from my lease up in Orlando because there's no reason for me to be down there.
Right.
For those of you, just a little personal background. I got to go to Orlando tomorrow. This is the first podcast, but I'm already going to be leaving. I don't need to be down there, though. I did last semester. I don't this semester. But I'm trapped with the lease until July, so I have to either assign it or, default on it and fuck up my credit score.
Yeah, well, let's go get some food and let's talk about that.
Hell
let's wrap this up.
Let's get something to eat.
Let's do it.
Appreciate being here.
Yes, sir.